Hello guys, welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto merged with the Primeval Oni Bloodline? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Blood Awakens. The forest blurred around Naruto as he leapt from branch to branch, each landing sending shockwaves of pain through his body. Blood soaked through his tattered orange jacket, but he couldn't stop, not with 3 enemy shinobi on his trail and Konoha still 20 minutes away at top speed. Damn it, he hissed through clenched teeth, pressing his hand against the wound in his side. The mission had gone sideways the moment his team discovered the supposed bandit camp was actually a gathering of missing nin from 4 different villages. A kunai whistled past his ear, embedding itself in the trunk ahead. Naruto didn't slow to look back. Captain Yamato and Sakura had stayed behind to hold off the main force, insisting he make it back to the village with the intelligence they'd gathered. The scroll tucked inside his jacket felt impossibly heavy now. The wound pulsed, a strange heat spreading outward from it. Different from the Nine Tails chakra, sharper, more primal. For a moment, his vision blurred. The forest taking on a reddish tint. There's nowhere to run, Jinchuriki. A voice called from behind. Naruto's foot slipped on a moss-covered branch, and he plummeted. Twisting midair, he managed to catch himself on a lower limb, swinging under it before launching himself forward again. The motion tore his wound wider, and he bit back a scream. The trees thinned ahead, revealing the great S-tone faces carved into the mountain overlooking Konoha. Almost there. A rush of air behind him was his only warning. Naruto dropped flat against the branch as a sword swept over his head, taking a few strands of blonde hair with it. He rolled, coming face to face with a shinobi wearing a scratched mist headband and a predatory grin. Hand over the scroll, and maybe we'll just take an arm instead of your life, the man said. Raising his blade again, Naruto formed the hand seal for his signature technique. Shadow Clone. Pain erupted from his wound, doubling him over mid-jutsu. The strange heat had become a burning inferno, spreading through his veins like liquid fire. Through watering eyes, he saw black markings crawling across his skin, nothing like the Nine Tails chakra pattern. The mist shinobi hesitated, uncertainty crossing his face. What the? Naruto's vision swam, the world dissolving into a crimson haze. Something ancient stirred in the depths of his consciousness, something had been sleeping far longer than the Nine Tails had been sealed inside him. Power, it whispered, not the fox's voice, deeper, older. Take it. When Naruto looked up, the world had changed. He could see the flow of chakra in the trees, in the air, in the shinobi before him. He could smell the man's fear, sharp and acrid. He moved without thinking, his body flowing like water. The enemy's sword came down, but Naruto was no longer there. His hand, now covered in swirling black markings, closed around the man's throat, lifting him off his feet. What are you? The shinobi choked out. Naruto didn't answer. He didn't recognize his own voice when he spoke. Where are the others? As if summoned by the question, 2 more shapes dropped from the canopy. Naruto turned, still holding their comrade, ND for the first time saw his reflection in their eyes. His own eyes glowing crimson, black markings like ancient script crawling across his face. The shinobi he held went limp in his grasp, chakra draw, ining visibly into the black markings on Naruto's arm. The sensation was intoxicating, the power heady and overwhelming. Demon, one of the newcomers whispered. Something inside Naruto laughed at that. Not the fox, but the other presence. The one that had awakened with the wound. They have no idea. His wound was closing, black marks swirling over it like living ink. Naruto tossed the unconscious shinobi aside and faced the remaining 2. They backed away slowly. We were just following orders, one said, hands raised. Whose orders? Naruto asked, his voice still not his own. Instead of answering, they fled. Naruto started to pursue, then staggered as the power receded, leaving him gasping and disoriented. The black markings retreated beneath his skin, leaving only a faint pattern around the now healed wound. What the hell was that? He whispered to the empty forest. No answer came. Not from the fox, not from the strange presence. Just the whisper of leaves in the wind. The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and Sakura's barely audible breathing as she concentrated. Her hands hovered over Naruto's bare torso, green healing chakra illuminating the dim room. This doesn't make any sense, she muttered, brow furrowed. The wound is completely healed, but your chakra network. She trailed off, pressing her lips together in concentration. Naruto stared at the ceiling, trying to ignore the sensation of something moving beneath his skin. Is it the nine tails? Sakura shook her head. I don't think so. This is different. She pulled her hands back, the healing light fading. There are new pathways forming, like nothing I've ever seen in medical texts. Forming. Naruto pushed himself up on his elbows. What does that mean? Before she could answer, the door slid open. Tsunade entered, followed by Shizune and Captain Yamato. The Hokage's expression was grim as she approached the bed. How are you feeling? She asked, eyes sharp as they examined him. Fine, Naruto said automatically. At her skeptical look, he amended, weird. Like something's moving inside me. Tsunade nodded to Yamato, who formed a hand seal. Wooden pillars rose from the floor around Naruto's bed, inscribed with symbols that glowed faintly. What's that for? Naruto demanded. Precaution, Tsunade said. Sakura, what did you find? As Sakura detailed her observations, Naruto's attention drifted inward. He'd tried speaking to the Nine Tails after returning to the village, but the fox had been unusually silent, retreated to the furthest corners of its cage. Quote, blackened chakra points along his right side, Sakura was saying. And there's a pattern emerging on his skin that fades in and out. Show me, Tsunade ordered. Naruto lifted his shirt. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if responding to the scrutiny, black lines began to surface, forming intricate patterns around the site of his former wound. Tsunade's sharp intake of breath was the only sound in the room. You recognize it, Yamato said. It wasn't a question. The Hokage's fingers hovered over the marks without touching them. I've seen something similar once before, in records that predated the founding of the village. She straightened. Shizune, go to the sealed archives. Bring the scrolls from the first Hokage's personal collection, the ones marked with the red spiral. Shizune nodded and hurried out. What is it? Naruto asked, a knot forming in his stomach. Some kind of curse mark. No, Tsunade said quietly. It's a bloodline, one that was supposed to have died out centuries ago. She met his eyes directly. The Oni bloodline. The name sent a jolt through Naruto, and beneath his skin, the marks pulsed in response. Oni, like the demons from the old stories. The stories came from somewhere, Tsunade said. Supposedly, before the Sage of Six Paths, before chakra was understood as we know it now, there were those who drew power directly from the natural world. Not by molding chakra, but by consuming it. Consuming, Sakura echoed, looking troubled. The records are fragmentary, Tsunade continued. But they suggest the Oni weren't just humans with a Kekkei Genkai. They were something else entirely, who could take human form. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. But what does that have to do with me? Naruto finally asked. I'm an Uzumaki on my mother's side. And no one ever mentioned anything about Oni blood. I don't know, Tsunade admitted. But I intend to find out. Before she could say more, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices, running footsteps. Then the door burst open. A young Chunin stood there, breathless. Lady Hokage, the village is under attack, the western wall. Tsunade was moving before he finished speaking. Yamato, stay with Naruto. Sakura, with me. I'm coming too, Naruto said, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. Absolutely not, Tsunade snapped. Not until we understand what's happening to you. I'm fine, Naruto insisted, standing. The black markings had receded again, and he felt stronger than he had in days. You need every shinobi you've got. Tsunade hesitated, then gave a curt nod. Stay with Yamato. First sign of trouble, with the enemy or yourself, you fall back. That's an order. The western wall was in chaos. Smoke billowed from a section that had been reduced to rubble, and shinobi clashed with black-clad attackers who moved with unnatural speed. They're targeting the archives, a Jonin reported as Tsunade's group arrived. 20, maybe 30 infiltrators. No headbands, no identifying marks. Naruto scanned the battlefield, the strange awareness from the forest returning. He could sense chakra signatures, distinguish individual flows even at a distance. One presence in particular drew his attention, a figure standing atop the rubble, directing the attack. Unlike the others, this chakra felt familiar somehow. Naruto, stay close, Yamato warned, following his gaze. A squad of attackers broke through the defensive line, heading for the administration building. Without thinking, Naruto leapt into their path. Shadow Clone Jutsu, he called, and a dozen copies materialized around him. The familiar technique felt different, sharper, more precise. His clones moved with perfect coordination, engaging the attackers with a fluidity Naruto had never experienced before. One of the enemy shinobi broke through, hands forming seals for a fire technique. Naruto moved to intercept, but Yamato was faster, wooden beams erupting from the ground to cage the attacker. I told you to stay close, Yamato said, landing beside him. Sorry, Captain, Naruto replied, though his attention had already shifted back to the figure on the rubble. The leader turned, as if sensing Naruto's scrutiny. And even from a distance, Naruto could see the smile that spread across the masked face. The figure raised a hand, pointing directly at him. As if responding to a signal, 3 attackers broke off from the main force, heading straight for Naruto and Yamato. Looks like we've been noticed, Yamato muttered, preparing another jutsu. The first attacker reached them, moving so fast he was barely visible. Naruto blocked the initial strike, but the second caught him across the ribs, sending him skidding backward. The pain triggered something. Black markings blossomed across his skin, and the world sharpened into crystal clarity. He could see the flow of chakra in his opponents, the patterns of their movements telegraphed before they made them. One launched a water jutsu. Naruto didn't dodge. He simply raised a hand, and the water parted around him, as if repelled by an invisible force. Their chakra is yours for the taking, the voice inside him whispered. Acting on instinct, Naruto grabbed the nearest attacker's arm. The black markings spread from his hand to the enemy's skin, and he felt the rush of chakra flowing into him. The attacker screamed, then collapsed. Yamato stared. Wood jutsu forgotten. Naruto, what did you just do? I don't know, Naruto said honestly, looking at his hand. The markings pulsed with absorbed chakra. It just happened. The remaining attackers fell back, wariness replacing confidence. From the corner of his eye, Naruto saw Sakura dispatching another group with her monstrous strength, while Tsunade coordinated the village's defense. The leader was watching him, head tilted in a gesture of curious assessment. Then, with a flick of the wrist, the figure summoned the retreating attackers and vanished in a swirl of smoke. As suddenly as it had begun, the attack was over, leaving destruction and confusion in its wake. They're retreating, Yamato said, sounding as puzzled as Naruto felt. But why? They barely engaged. It wasn't an invasion, Tsunade said, joining them. It was a test. Her eyes fixed on Naruto, specifically on the black markings that were slowly receding. Or a confirmation. You think they were after me? Naruto asked, the implications sinking in. I think they were checking to see if what they sensed was real, Tsunade replied. The question is, how did they know about your condition before we did? A new voice entered the conversation. Because they've been watching for it for a very long time. They turned to find a woman standing a few paces away. She was tall and slender, with striking violet eyes and dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. Scrolls hung from her belt, and a tanto was strapped across her back. Though she wore no headband, the quality of her movement marked her as a skilled shinobi. Who are you? Tsunade demanded, subtly shifting into a defensive stance. My name is Kira, the woman said, her eyes never leaving Naruto. I'm a scholar specializing in extinct bloodlines. And I believe we need to talk about the Oni blood that's awakening in him. She nodded to Naruto. Before they come back in force. The Hokage's office felt too small for the tension it currently contained. Tsunade sat behind her desk, fingers steepled before her, while Shizune stood at her shoulder with the scrolls she'd retrieved. Naruto, Sakura, and Yamato were positioned near the window, while Kira stood before the desk, her posture formal but relaxed. Start from the beginning, Tsunade said. What do you know about what's happening to Naruto? Kira's violet eyes flicked to Naruto before returning to Tsunade. The Oni bloodline was believed extinct for over 1,000 years. It predates the Sage of Six Paths, perhaps even chakra as we understand it. So I've read, Tsunade said, gesturing to the ancient scrolls. What I want to know is how it's appeared in Naruto, and why now. Bloodlines can lie dormant for generations, Kira explained. The right combination of circumstances, stress, injury, exposure to certain chakra types, can trigger activation. The Nine Tails, Sakura said suddenly. Could that be what kept it dormant all this time? Kira nodded. That's my theory. The tailed beast's chakra would have overpowered any other bloodline signature. But something changed recently, didn't it? She looked at Naruto. You were injured on your mission. Naruto touched his side where the wound had been. A blade coated with some kind of poison. It burned, more than it should have. Not poison, Kira said. A catalyst, specifically designed to awaken dormant bloodlines. That's impossible, Tsunade said. Such a substance would require extensive knowledge of how bloodlines work at their most fundamental level. Kira finished for her. Yes, the grow up that attacked today. They're called Shinzoku. They've been researching bloodlines for decades, seeking ways to control them, harvest them, awaken them. And they're the ones who attacked Naruto's team? Yamato asked. Almost certainly, Kira confirmed. They've been searching for traces of the Oni bloodline for years. It's their holy grail, you might say. Why? Naruto asked, speaking for the first time since they'd entered the office. What's so special about this bloodline? Kira's expression grew solemn. According to the oldest records, the Oni weren't just powerful, they were limitless. Their ability to absorb and manipulate chakra had no ceiling. They could take energy from everything around them, plants, animals, even other humans. Some stories claim they could eventually draw power from the earth itself. From the stars, from dimensions beyond our own. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. So these Shinzoku people, Naruto said slowly, they think I have this power now. They know you do, Kira corrected. What happened on the wall? You absorbed that attacker's chakra directly. That's the most basic Oni ability, and one that no other bloodline can replicate. Naruto remembered the rush of power, the intoxicating feeling as the enemy's chakra had flowed into him. It felt natural, like I'd always known how to do it. Because it is natural, to the Oni, Kira said. But that's just the beginning. As the bloodline awakens fully, you'll develop abilities that haven't been seen in a millennium. And you know this how, exactly? Tsunade asked, suspicion evident in her tone. Kira smiled thinly. I've spent my life studying what others dismissed as myths. The Oni bloodline has been my particular focus. She reached into her robes and withdrew a worn journal. This contains observations from the last known Oni, who lived during the Warring States period. That's less than a century ago, Yamato pointed out. You said the bloodline had been extinct for 1,000 years. I said it was believed extinct, Kira corrected. There have been flickers. Individuals who manifested partial abilities, but never the full bloodline. They typically died young, usually hunted down by those who feared what they represented. Her gaze returned to Naruto. You're different. The combination of Uzumaki vitality and the Nine Tails chakra make you uniquely suited to survive the awakening. You seem to know an awful lot about me, Naruto said, uneasy. I make it my business to know about potential bloodline carriers, Kira replied. I ally those who might attract Shinzoku's attention. Tsunade leaned forward. And what exactly is your interest in all this? Why come to us now? Because Shinzoku will be back, Kira said simply. And next time, they won't be testing. They'll be taking. Either they'll capture Naruto to study and exploit his awakening bloodline, or they'll kill him to prevent it from fully manifesting. Let them try, Naruto said, a hard edge entering his voice. You don't understand, Kira said. Shinzoku has been preparing for this for generations. They have countermeasures for every known bloodline. They'll be developing ones for you as we speak, based on what they saw today. So what do you propose? Tsunade asked. I can help Naruto understand and control the Oni bloodline, Kira said. With proper training, he could master abilities that would make him virtually unstoppable. At what cost? Sakura interjected, speaking the question that hung unspoken in the air. Kira turned to her. That's the question, isn't it? The records are unclear on how the Oni bloodline affects its carriers over time. Some suggest physical changes, others mention mental alterations, enhanced instincts, different thought patterns. Becoming less human. You mean, Naruto said flatly. Kira didn't deny it. Evolution always has a price. I won't let that happen, Sakura said fiercely. We'll find a way to help you control this without losing yourself. Naruto appreciated her certainty, though he didn't share it. Already he could feel the changes within him, subtle shifts in how he perceived the world, in what felt natural and what felt alien. For now, Tsunade said, breaking the tense silence, our priority is understanding what we're dealing with. Kira, you'll work with our medical team to document the changes in Naruto's condition. Yamato, increase security around the village. I want to know immediately if Shinzoku makes another move. What about me? Naruto asked. Tsunade fixed him with a stern look. You will follow Kira's instructions on managing this bloodline, but you will not leave the village until we better understand the situation. Is that clear? Naruto wanted to argue but recognized the wisdom in her caution. Clear. As the meeting dispersed, Kira approached him. We should begin immediately. The early stages of awakening are critical. Patterns established now will affect how the bloodline develops. Develops into what, exactly? Naruto asked. Kira's violet eyes seemed to look through him, past the human shell to whatever was awakening beneath. That, Naruto Uzumaki, depends entirely on you. The training ground was empty at this hour, the moon casting long shadows across the clearing. Naruto sat cross-legged in the center, Kira kneeling before him, her expression intent. Close your eyes, she instructed. Focus on your chakra flow. Naruto obeyed, falling easily into the meditative state he'd learned while training to control the Nine-Tails chakra. Immediately, he sensed the difference, two distinct energies flowing through his system. The familiar orange-red of the fox's chakra, contained but potent, and a new current, black as midnight and twice as deep. I can feel it, he said softly. It's like an ocean underneath everything else. That's the Oni chakra, Kira confirmed. Older than the tailed beasts, older than ninjutsu itself. Now, try to draw on it, just a little. Naruto reached for the dark energy, expecting resistance. Instead, it surged eagerly toward his call, rushing through his pathways with such force that he gasped. His eyes flew open, and he saw Kira watching him with fascination as black markings crawled across his skin. Good, she said. Now, look around you. What do you see? The world had shifted again, as it had in the forest. Chakra signatures blazed like beacons. Trees, insects, even the soil beneath him pulsed with energy. In the distance, Konoha glowed like a constellation of stars, each light a living being. Everything, Naruto breathed. I can see. Everything that has chakra. The Oni were natural sensors, attuned to all forms of energy, Kira explained. Now, reach out with your awareness. Find something small, an insect, perhaps, and try to draw its energy toward you. Naruto focused on a cricket near his knee. He extended his awareness toward it, imagining a connection between them. To his surprise, a thin thread of chakra stretched from his hand to the insect. The cricket froze, then withered as its energy flowed into Naruto. He broke the connection immediately, horrified. I killed it. You took its life force, Kira corrected. As if this were a perfectly normal occurrence. That's the foundation of Oni power, the ability to consume chakra directly from any source. I don't want to kill things to get stronger, Naruto said firmly. Kira's expression softened slightly. There are more nuanced applications. With practice, you can take only what you need, leaving the source alive. The most skilled Oni could even filter the chakra they absorbed, taking only specific aspects. Like what? Elemental affinities, specific jutsu, even Kekkei Genkei, according to some records. Naruto stared at her. That's impossible. Bloodlines are genetic. They're expressions of chakra shaped by genetics, Kira countered. The Oni don't copy bloodlines, they consume and integrate the chakra patterns that create them. The implications were staggering. If what she said was true, there was virtually no limit to what he might eventually be able to do. There must be drawbacks, he said. Kira nodded, pleased by his insight. Many. Absorbing too much, too quickly can overwhelm your system. Some chakra types might be toxic if not properly filtered. And there's the matter of hungers. Hungers. The more you use these abilities, the more you'll crave chakra, Kira explained. The Oni of legend were insatiable, constantly seeking stronger sources to consume. It's why they were feared. Why they were eventually hunted to extinction. Naruto fell silent, processing this. The power was seductive, he couldn't deny that. Even now, part of him wanted to reach out, to draw in more of the energy surrounding him. Let's try something else, Kira suggested, perhaps sensing his discomfort. The Oni had another fundamental ability, chakra manipulation without hand seals. This, at least, sounded less morally ambiguous. Like the Rasengan, more versatile. The Oni understood chakra on an instinctive level. They could shape it directly with thought alone. She gestured to a fallen leaf nearby. Try to move it without touching it. Naruto focused on the leaf, imagining his chakra extending toward it, lifting it. Nothing happened. You're thinking like a shinobi, Kira said. Forget what you know about chakra control. The Oni don't push or pull with their energy, they become one with what they're affecting. Naruto tried again, this time imagining the leaf as an extension of himself. To his surprise, the black markings on his arm pulsed, and the leaf twitched. Encouraged, he deepened his focus, and the leaf rose slowly into the air. I'm doing it, he said, amazed. That's just the beginning, Kira assured him. A rustle from the trees interrupted them. The leaf dropped as Naruto's concentration broke, his senses immediately alert to the new presence. Someone's watching us, he said quietly. Kira didn't seem surprised. Yes, they've been there since we started. Before Naruto could respond, a figure stepped from the shadows. Tall and lean, with silver hair that caught the moonlight and a mask covering the lower half of his face. Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said, tension draining from his shoulders. Hope I'm not interrupting, Kakashi said casually, though his visible eye was sharp as it assessed Kira. Lady Tsunade asked me to keep an eye on your training. She doesn't trust me, Kira surmised, seemingly unbothered by this. Let's say she values a second opinion, Kakashi replied diplomatically. He turned to Naruto. How are you feeling? Different, Naruto admitted. But okay. Kira's been explaining how the Oni bloodline works. So I gathered. Fascinating stuff about consuming chakra. Kakashi's tone was light, but Naruto knew his former teacher well enough to detect the concern beneath. It's not as bad as it sounds, Naruto began, then stopped. Was he already defending abilities that had horrified him moments ago? Kakashi seemed to read his thoughts. Power isn't inherently good or evil, Naruto. It's how you use it that matters. Exactly, Kira said, and with proper guidance, Naruto can harness these abilities without losing sight of who he is. And you're offering this guidance out of the goodness of your heart? Kakashi asked mildly. Kira met his gaze without flinching. I have my reasons for opposing Shinzoku. Let's leave it at that for now. A tense silence followed, broken by a distant explosion that lit up the night sky over the stern wall, the same section that had been attacked earlier. They're back, Naruto said, already on his feet. Kakashi nodded grimly. Sooner than expected. They won't waste time now, Kira warned. They'll be coming straight for Naruto. As if to confirm her words, 3 chakra signatures appeared at the edge of the training ground, signatures Naruto recognized from the earlier attack. The leader stood in front, mask gleaming in the moonlight, flanked by 2 subordinates. Naruto Uzumaki, the leader called, voice surprisingly melodic for someone so menacing. The vessel of both Fox and Oni. A rare combination. Who are you? Naruto demanded, the black markings spreading across his skin in response to the threat. The leader removed their mask, revealing a woman's face, beautiful and terrible. With eyes the color of burnished gold and skin marked with faint, scale-like patterns. My name is Mizuki, she said, High Priestess of Shinzoku. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, are coming with me. I don't think so, Kakashi said, stepping forward, his hand already moving to uncover his Sharingan. Mizuki's smile was cold. You don't have a choice. She formed a single hand seal, and the air around them distorted. Naruto felt a pulling sensation, as if the very fabric of space was being warped. Space-time ninjutsu, Kakashi warned. They're trying to create a dimensional pocket. Kira moved with blinding speed. hands flashing through seals Naruto had never seen before. Sealing art. Dimensional anchor. The distortion faltered, reality snapping back into place. Mizuki's smile faded. A sealing master, she observed. Interesting company you keep, Uzumaki. You have no idea, Naruto replied, falling into a fighting stance. The Oni chakra surged through him, eager for release. Mizuki signaled her companions. Take the boy, kill the others. The battle erupted in a blur of movement. Kakashi engaged one of the subordinates, Sharingan whirling as he matched the enemy's speed. Kira faced the other, her tanto gleaming as she wove between attacks with fluid grace. Mizuki came straight for Naruto, her hands wreathed in a strange, shimmering chakra. Don't resist, Uzumaki. You don't understand what you're becoming. But we do. We can help you master it. I've got all the help I need, Naruto shot back, forming a Rasengan. But as he channeled chakra, something unexpected happened. The Rasengan turned black. Shot through with crimson. Mizuki's eyes widened. The integration is happening faster than we calculated. Naruto lunged forward, the modified Rasengan extended. Mizuki dodged, barely, the attack grazing her shoulder. Where it touched, her flesh seemed to wither, chakra visibly draining. Fascinating, she said, examining the injury without apparent concern. Ural Rhea, Dai developing advanced consumption techniques. Naruto stared at his hand in shock. The Rasengan hadn't just damaged Mizuki physically, it had drawn her chakra into him. He could feel it inside, foreign and potent. Mizuki took advantage of his distraction, closing the distance between them with inhuman speed. Her hand pressed against his chest, and Naruto felt a jolt as her chakra invaded his system. A taste of your own medicine, she whispered. We've been studying the Oni for centuries, preparing for this moment. Naruto gasped as his energy began to drain, the black markings on his skin flickering like a failing light. Inside, he felt the nine tails stir, responding to the threat. Let me out, the fox growled. This female seeks to drain us both. For once, Naruto was tempted to comply. But before he could, another voice rose from the depths of his consciousness, the same ancient presence he'd felt in the forest. No need, it rumbled. She plays with forces she does not understand. Power surged through Naruto, not from the nine tails, but from the Oni bloodline. The black markings stabilized, then began to spread further, forming complex patterns across his entire body. Where Mizuki's hand touched his chest, the markings swirled outward, engulfing her fingers. Her confident expression faltered. What? You're right, Naruto said, his voice overlaid with something older, deeper. I don't understand what I'm becoming. But neither do you. He grabbed her wrist, and the flow of chakra reversed, rushing from Mizuki into Naruto with such force that she cried out. The scale-like turns on her skin began to fade as her power drained. With unexpected strength, she tore free of his grip and leapt backward. Enough, she signaled her subordinates, who disengaged from their battles with Kakashi and Kira. This is merely our first meeting, Uzumaki. There will be others. I'll be waiting, Naruto promised, the black markings still pulsing with absorbed power. Mizuki's golden eyes narrowed. You may not thank me for this gift when you understand its price. She formed a hand seal, and all three Shinzoku members vanished in swirls of distorted space. As the threat disappeared, the Oni chakra receded, the markings fading beneath Naruto's skin. He staggered, suddenly exhausted. Kakashi was at his side in an instant, supporting him. Are you all right? Yeah, Naruto said, though he wasn't entirely sure it was true. That was intense. Kira approached, her violet eyes focused on Naruto with renewed interest. You reversed her chakra absorption technique. That shouldn't be possible for someone so new to the bloodline. It wasn't me, Naruto admitted, still leaning on Kakashi. It was like something else took over. The Oni consciousness, Kira murmured. It's awakening alongside the bloodline. Kakashi's eye narrowed. That sounds suspiciously like another consciousness trying to take control of Naruto. We've been down this road before. It's different from the nine tails, Naruto said, searching for words to explain. Not separate, exactly. More like another part of me that's always been there, just sleeping. A distant commotion drew their attention, lights flaring at the village gates. Shouts carrying on the night air. We should report to Lady Tsunade, Kakashi said. Shinzoku's retreat may be a diversion. They made their way back to the village, Naruto's strength returning with each step. By the time they reached the Hokage Tower, the black markings had completely receded, though he could still feel the power simmering beneath his skin, like a tide waiting to rise. Tsunade's office was crowded with jonin giving reports of skirmishes at different points around the village. She dismissed them as Naruto's group entered, her amber eyes instantly fixing on him. Status, she demanded. Shinzoku made direct contact, Kakashi reported. Their leader, Mizuki, specifically targeted Naruto. They attempted some sort of space-time technique, possibly to extract him from the village. I disrupted it, Kira added. But they retreated rather than continuing the fight. Tactical withdrawal, Tsunade concluded. They got what they came for, confirmation of Naruto's condition. She turned to him. How do you feel? Different, Naruto said honestly. The power, it's getting stronger. He hesitated, then added, during the fight, I absorbed Mizuki's chakra. Not on purpose, it just happened. Tsunade's expression grew troubled. These abilities you're developing, they're dangerous, Naruto. Not just to enemies, but potentially to everyone around you. I can control it, Naruto insisted, though the memory of the cricket withering at his touch lingered uncomfortably. Can you? Tsunade challenged. Or is it controlling you? Before Naruto could answer, the door opened, and Shizune entered with a middle-aged man Naruto didn't recognize. He wore simple robes and spectacles, his gray hair tied back in a scholar's knot. Lady Tsunade, this is Elder Takeda from the archives, Shizune introduced him. He has information about the scrolls you requested. The elder bowed deeply. Forgive the intrusion, Lady Hokage. When I heard the IRST Hokage's sealed scrolls had been accessed, I felt I should report immediately. What have you found? Tsunade asked. The scrolls contain a warning, Takeda said gravely. Lord First believed the Oni bloodline was not extinct, merely dormant. He feared it might one day resurface in Konoha. Why would he think that? Kakashi asked. Because the last known carrier of the bloodline was brought to Konoha during its founding. Takeda explained. A woman from a distant clan who had manifested partial Oni traits. She was studied by Lord First, who was fascinated by bloodlines of all kinds. A chill ran down Naruto's spine. What happened to her? She died young, as most partial manifestations did. But not before bearing a child. Takeda's gaze fixed on Naruto. A daughter who married into the Uzumaki clan. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. That's impossible, Naruto finally said. Someone would have known. My mother would have shown signs. The bloodline became increasingly diluted with each generation. Takeda continued. Eventually, it was forgotten, dismissed as a curiosity from a less enlightened age. Until now, Kira said softly. Until something triggered its reawakening. Naruto thought of the wound, the strange poison, no, catalyst, that had burned through his veins. Shinzoku knew. Somehow, they knew it was still there, dormant in my blood. They've been tracking bloodlines for generations, Kira confirmed. They must have had records of your lineage. Which means they've been watching you for a very long time, Tsunade concluded, her expression grim. The question is, what do they want? Why go to such lengths to awaken this bloodline now? Power, Kira said simply. The Oni bloodline, fully manifested, would be beyond anything seen in the modern era. Imagine a shinobi who could absorb any jutsu, any bloodline, who could manipulate chakra in its rawest form. A weapon, Kakashi translated. Or a god, Kira countered. The ancient texts speak of fully realized Oni as being closer to deities than humans. Beings who could reshape reality itself through their understanding of the fundamental energies that compose our world. Naruto shook his head, overwhelmed. I don't want to be a weapon or a god. I just want to be Hokage. A hint of sympathy crossed Kira's face. I'm afraid that choice may no longer be yours. The bloodline is awakening, with or without your consent. The only question now is whether you master it, or it masters you. There has to be a way to suppress it, Sakura said, speaking for the first time since entering the office. She'd been silent, absorbing everything with the analytical mind of a medical ninja. Sealing techniques, perhaps. The Nine Tails was sealed, Kira pointed out. But this is different. The Oni bloodline isn't a separate entity that can be contained. it's becoming part of Naruto's genetic makeup, rewriting him at the cellular level. Then we find a way to slow the process, Sakura insisted. Give him time to adapt. To maintain control. Tsunade nodded. Sakura, work with the medical corps. I want everything we have on bloodline suppressants. She turned to Kakashi. Double the guard around the village. Especially near Naruto's apartment. With respect, Lady Hokage, Kira interjected, hiding Naruto away won't solve anything. He needs to learn to control these abilities before they control him. And you're volunteering to teach him? Tsunade asked skeptically. I've spent my life studying the Oni, Kira replied. There's no one better qualified. Tsunade considered this, then nodded reluctantly. Fine, but your training sessions will be supervised by Kakashi or another Jonin of my choosing. And at the first sign that Naruto is losing control, we shut it down. Agreed, Kira said. Don't I get a say in this? Naruto asked, frustration building. All eyes turned to him. Of course you do, Tsunade said, her tone softening slightly. What do you want, Naruto? He thought for a long moment. I want to understand what's happening to me. I want to learn to control it. He met Kira's gaze directly. But I won't become a monster. I won't let this change who I am. Kira's expression was unreadable. We'll see. Dawn painted the horizon in shades of gold and crimson as Naruto stood on the head of the fourth Hokage's stone monument, looking out over the village. Below, Konoha was coming to life. Unaware of the changes occurring within one of its shinobi. Couldn't sleep, a voice asked from behind him. Naruto didn't turn. He'd sensed Kakashi's approach long before his former teacher spoke, another new ability manifesting without conscious effort. I'm afraid too, Naruto admitted. Every time I close my eyes, I feel it growing stronger. Kakashi moved to stand beside him. The Oni bloodline. Yeah, Naruto looked down at his hands. No black markings were visible, but he could feel them just beneath the surface, ready to emerge at the slightest provocation. It's like having the nine tails all over again, except, it doesn't feel foreign. It feels like it's always been part of me, just waiting. Perhaps it has, Kakashi said thoughtfully. We all contain dormant potential. Pieces of ourselves we never knew existed until circumstances forced them to the surface. Most people's dormant potential doesn't let them drain the life force from other living things, Naruto pointed out dryly. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled in what might have been a smile beneath his mask. True, but then, you've never been. Most people, have you? Despite everything, Naruto found himself smiling too. Guess not. They stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the village wake. I wanted to ask you something, Naruto finally said. About Kira. You don't trust her, Kakashi observed. It's not that, exactly. She knows a lot about the Oni bloodline, more than seems possible for someone who's just studied it. And the way she talks about it, like it's something to be celebrated. Not feared. Kakashi nodded. I've had similar thoughts. Lady Tsunade has Anbu looking into her background. So far, they've confirmed she is indeed a scholar specializing in extinct bloodlines. With a particular focus on pre-Sage era powers. But her knowledge is too specific, too detailed. As if she's seen these abilities firsthand, not just read about them in ancient scrolls. A troubling thought occurred to Naruto. Could she be working with Shinzoku? It's possible, Kakashi admitted. Though her interference during the attack suggests otherwise. For now, we watch and learn, both from her and about her. Movement in the village below caught Naruto's attention. A familiar pink-haired figure hurrying toward the Hokage Tower, a stack of scrolls under her arm. Sakura's been up all night, Naruto observed, a pang of guilt hitting him. Researching ways to help me. She cares about you, Kakashi said simply. As do many people in this village. He fixed Naruto with a meaningful look. Remember that, especially as these changes continue. You're not facing this alone. Naruto nodded, grateful for the reminder. I should go. Kira wants to start training early. I'll be there, Kakashi assured him. Just be careful, Naruto. Power always comes with a price. I know, Naruto replied, his expression solemn. That's what worries me. The fours. Tea clearing Kira had chosen for their training was far from the village, bordered by ancient trees that seemed to watch with silent judgment. Morning mist clung to the ground, giving the area an otherworldly quality. Kira stood in the center, hands clasped behind her back, while Yamato waited at the edge of the clearing. No sign of Kakashi yet. You're late, Kira observed as Naruto approached. Sorry, he replied automatically. Then caught himself. Since when did he apologize for being a few minutes late? The Oni were never bound by human concepts of time, Kira said, a hint of amusement in her voice. Something you'll understand as the bloodline develops. What does that mean? Naruto asked, falling into step beside her as she began to circle the clearing. The Oni perceived time differently, saw the flow of moments rather than discrete seconds and minutes. It gave them tremendous advantages in battle, among other things. Before Naruto could press for details, Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves. Sorry I'm late, I got lost on the path of life. At least one of us is consistent, Naruto muttered, earning an eye smile from his former teacher. Kira seemed unperturbed by the interruption. Today we focus on conscious control of the bloodline's most basic ability, chakra absorption. Naruto's enthusiasm dimmed. I'm not sure I want to master that particular skill. Which is precisely why you must, Kira countered. Right now, the absorption happens instinctively, triggered by threat or need. Without conscious control, you risk drawing chakra unintentionally from those around you. That sobering thought silenced Naruto's objections. We'll start small, Kira continued, producing a small plant in a pot. Plants have simple chakra systems, perfect for learning precise control. She set the plant before Naruto. Summon the Oni chakra, but don't touch the plant yet. Naruto closed his eyes, reaching for the dark energy he'd felt before. It responded eagerly, rising to his call. The black markings spread across his skin, and when he opened his eyes, the world had shifted into the heightened perception he was beginning to recognize. Good, Kira said, her own chakra C.G. nature blazing violet in his enhanced vision. Now, extend one finger toward the plant. The goal is to draw just enough chakra to wilt a single leaf, no more. Naruto focused on a leaf near the top of the small plant. He reached out, watching as a thin tendril of black energy extended from his fingertip toward the plant. Gently, Kira cautioned. Imagine sipping through a straw, not gulping from a river. The moment his energy connected with the plant, Naruto felt the rush of chakra flow. It was minimal compared to what he'd taken from Mizuki, but still intoxicating. He forced himself to focus, to limit the intake to the smallest possible amount. The targeted leaf began to brown at its edges, then curled inward. Naruto immediately broke the connection. Excellent, Kira said, examining the plant. The rest remains untouched. That's the precision you need to develop. For the next hour, they continued with similar exercises, Kira bringing out progressively more complex plants, then small insects contained in glass jars. Each time, she pushed Naruto to refine his control, taking only specific types of energy, leaving the source weakened but alive. Throughout it all, Kakashi and Yamato watched silently, their presence both reassuring and evaluative. You're progressing faster than I anticipated, Kira finally said, seeming genuinely impressed. The bloodline resonates with you naturally. It feels. Naruto hesitated, trying to articulate the sensation. Right, like finding a key that fits a lock I never knew was there. Kira nodded. That's how it should feel. The Oni weren't separate from nature, they were its ultimate expression. The ability to cycle energy, to take and give back. Give back? Naruto asked, latching onto this new concept. You never mentioned that part. A smile touched Kira's lips. Because you weren't ready to hear it. The Oni weren't just consumers of chakra, they were conduits. What they took, they could also give, transformed by passing through their unique energy. For the first time, Naruto felt a spark of hope. If the bloodline allowed him to give energy as well as take it, perhaps it wasn't as inherently destructive as he'd feared. Show me, he said eagerly. Not yet, Kira cautioned. You need to master taking before you can give. But soon. She glanced at the position of the sun. That's enough for today. Rest. Meditate on what you've learned. As they prepared to return to the village, a rustle in the underbrush caught Naruto's attention. His enhanced senses detected a familiar chakra signature, though it was muted, as if deliberately suppressed. We're being watched, he said quietly to Kakashi. The Jonin nodded almost imperceptibly. I noticed. Not Shinzoku, the chakra pattern is different. A spy from another village, perhaps, Kira suggested. Word of your awakening bloodline will spread quickly. The implication settled heavily on Naruto. If Shinzoku wasn't the only group interested in the Oni bloodline, his problems were about to multiply. Sakura's apartment was cluttered with scrolls and medical texts, stacked in precarious piles around her small living space. She'd been working non-stop since the meeting with Tsunade, searching for anything that might help Naruto. A knock at her door roused her from her concentration. She opened it to find Naruto standing there, looking tired but less tense than he had the previous day. "Hey," he said, offering a small smile. "Kakashi-sensei said you wanted to see me." "Come in," Sakura replied, clearing a stack of papers from her couch. "How was training?" "Weird," Naruto admitted, sitting down. "But helpful, I think. I'm learning to control it, at least a little." Sakura studied him with a medic's eye, noting the subtle changes since yesterday, his posture more fluid, his movements more precise. His eyes clearer and more focused. "I might have found something," she said, retrieving a particularly ancient scroll from her desk. "It's from the early days of Konoha, when the first Hokage was experimenting with his wood release." "What does wood release have to do with the Oni bloodline?" Naruto asked. "Not the jutsu itself, but how he controlled it," Sakura explained. "All bloodlines require balance, a harmony between the body's natural systems and the enhanced abilities. The first developed a meditation technique specifically for maintaining that balance." She unrolled the scroll, revealing complex diagrams of chakra pathways and handwritten notes. "It might help you keep the Oni chakra from overwhelming your natural energy." Naruto leaned forward, genuinely interested. Kira never mentioned anything about balance. "No, she wouldn't," Sakura said, a hint of suspicion in her voice. "She seems more focused on awakening your abilities than containing them." "You don't trust her," Naruto observed. "Do you?" Naruto considered the question seriously. "Not entirely, but she knows things about what's happening to me that no one else does. For now, I need her help." Sakura nodded, understanding but not necessarily agreeing. "Just be careful, and try this meditation tonight, before you sleep. It might help with the changes you're experiencing." Naruto took the scroll, his fingers brushing against hers. A jolt passed between them, not romantic, but something else entirely. Sakura gasped, pulling back her hand. "What was that?" she demanded. Naruto looked horrified. "I don't know. I didn't mean to." He broke off, staring at his hand. No black markings were visible, but both of them had felt something pass between them. "Let me see your chakra network," Sakura said, professional concern overriding personal space. Her hands glowed green as she performed a diagnostic jutsu, scanning Naruto's system. "Your chakra is changing," she reported, brow furrowed in concentration. "The Oni energy is integrating with your natural chakra, creating new pathways. When our hands touched, it reached out automatically, like a reflex." "Did I hurt you?" Naruto asked, panic edging his voice. "No," Sakura assured him. "It was just strange. Like a current passing through me." She completed her scan, looking troubled. "The integration is happening faster than I expected. At this rate, what? The balance will shift," she said quietly. "Within weeks, maybe days, the Oni chakra will become your dominant energy source." The implications hung heavy between them. Would he still be Naruto when that happened? Or something else entirely? "Try the meditation," Sakura urged, squeezing his shoulder. "And come see me tomorrow. I want to monitor these changes closely." Quote, as Naruto left her apartment, scroll tucked safely in his jacket, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was running out of time. Not just to master the bloodline, but to preserve who he was before it transformed him completely. Night had fallen by the time Naruto reached his apartment. He was exhausted, both from training with Kira and the emotional toll of everything he'd learned. All he wanted was sleep, but Sakura's warning echoed in his mind. He unrolled the scroll on his floor, studying the meditation diagrams. The technique seemed straightforward enough, a method of balancing different chakra types within the body, preventing any one energy from becoming dominant. Settling into a cross-legged position, Naruto began the breathing pattern described in the scroll. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. Simple, yet effective at calming his racing thoughts. As his mind quieted, he became aware of the currents flowing through him, his original chakra. The Nine Tails energy, and now the dark tide of the Oni bloodline. 3 distinct powers, each vying for dominance. Following the scroll's instructions, he visualized these energies as colored streams: blue for his natural chakra, orange-red for the Nine Tails, black for the Oni. Then, with careful concentration, he began to guide them, encouraging them to flow in parallel rather than mixing. It was harder than it looked. The Oni chakra in particular seemed resistant to containment, constantly seeking to merge with his natural energy. But Naruto was nothing if not stubborn. For nearly an hour, he wrestled with the opposing forces within him, gradually establishing boundaries between them. By the time he opened his eyes, sweat beaded his brow, but he felt clearer. The constant pressure of the Oni bloodline had receded slightly, pushed back to a manageable level. It worked, he murmured, surprised and relieved. He was about to roll up the scroll when a soft thump at his window drew his attention. A shadow perched on the sill, too large for a bird, too small for an adult. Instantly alert, Naruto approached cautiously. The window slid open before he reached it, and a young girl tumbled into his apartment, landing in a crouch. She couldn't have been more than 12 or 13, with short-cropped red hair and eyes that gleamed gold in the darkness. "Who are you?" Naruto demanded, instinctively dropping into a defensive stance. "How did you get past the guards?" The girl straightened, seeming unperturbed by his hostility. "They're looking for adults. No one notices a child." Her voice was strange, old beyond her years, with an accent Naruto couldn't place. "My name is Akane. I've come to warn you." "Warn me about what?" "Kira," the girl said simply. "She's not what she appears to be." Naruto studied the girl more carefully. Despite her youth, she moved like a trained shinobi, balanced and aware. And there was something about her chakra. "You're from Shinzoku," he guessed. A bitter smile twisted the girl's features. "I escaped them. Just as you should escape Kira before it's too late. Why should I trust you?" Instead of answering, Akane pushed up her sleeve, revealing a forearm covered in black markings, similar to those that appeared on Naruto's skin when he accessed the Oni power. "Because we're the same," she said quietly. "Experiments. Vessels for a power we never asked for." Naruto's hostility faltered. "You have the Oni bloodline too." "An artificial version," Akane corrected. "Shinzoku has been trying to recreate it for generations. I'm the closest they've come. A partial success, they called me." She stepped further into the apartment, the moonlight revealing more details: scars at her wrists and neck, a haunted look in her golden eyes. "They kept me in a laboratory for as long as I can remember," she continued. "Testing the limits of the artificial bloodline, seeing how much chakra I could absorb before my body started to break down." "You escaped," Naruto said, feeling a mixture of horror and admiration. Akane nodded. "During the attack on your village." The confusion provided cover. Her expression hardened. I didn't come here to tell you my story. I came to warn you about Kira." "What about her?" "She's Shinzoku," Akane said flatly. "Their chief researcher, the one who designed the catalyst that activated your dormant bloodline. The one who oversaw my creation." Naruto shook his head, trying to reconcile this with what he knew. "That doesn't make sense. She fought against Shinzoku during the attack. She's been helping me control the bloodline." "Of course she has," Akane replied. "She wants you to embrace it, to let it grow stronger. The attack was staged, a way to gain your trust, to position herself as your ally and teacher." "Why would she do that?" "Because a willing subject is more valuable than an unwilling one," Akane said, as if the answer were obvious. "They need you to accept the bloodline, to merge with it completely. Once that happens, they'll take you, and this time, they won't need to fight. You'll go willingly." Naruto wanted to dismiss her claims, but something about them resonated with the doubts he'd already been harboring. Kira's extensive knowledge, her eagerness to push his development, her fascination with the more extreme aspects of the bloodline. "If what you're saying is true," he said slowly, "why tell me? Why risk coming here?" Akane's composure cracked slightly, revealing the child beneath the hardened exterior. "Because I've seen what they do to people like us. Because no one warned me." She met his gaze directly. "And because you're the only one who might be able to stop them." The sincerity in her voice was undeniable. Whatever her motives, Akane believed what she was telling him. I need proof, Naruto said finally. Something concrete that links Kira to Shinzoku. Akane reached into her tattered clothing and withdrew a small scroll. This contains records from the laboratory, details of the experiments, Kira's involvement, their plans for you. She held it out. See for yourself. Naruto took the scroll cautiously. Why would they keep records detailed enough to incriminate themselves? Arrogance, Akane replied simply. They never imagined someone like me could escape, let alone understand what I was taking. Her expression darkened. They don't see us as people, Naruto. Just vessels for power they want to control. Before Naruto could respond, a sound from outside caught both their attention, a change in the pattern of the night guards. Footsteps approaching his building. I have to go, Akane said urgently. They'll be looking for me. Read the scroll, but tell no one about me yet, especially not Kira. Wait, Naruto said as she moved toward the window. How do I find you if I need to? A ghost of a smile touched Akane's lips. You won't need to. I'll find you. She paused, one foot on the windowsill. Be careful who you trust, Naruto. The Oni bloodline changes more than just your abilities. It changes how people see you, what they want from you. With that cryptic warning, she vanished into the night, leaving Naruto alone with the scroll and a head full of doubts. The next morning dawned gray and drizzly, matching Naruto's mood perfectly. He'd spent half the night reading the scroll Akane had given him, and the other half too disturbed to sleep. The records were detailed and damning. Laboratory notes documenting years of experiments on children with trace amounts of rare bloodlines, attempts to artificially enhance and activate dormant genetic traits, and at the center of it all, Kira's precise, clinical observations. If the documents were genuine, she wasn't just associated with Shinzoku, she was its scientific heart. The architect of their bloodline research program. And Naruto was her masterpiece, the culmination of generations of work. Vessel 01, they called him in the notes. The first natural carrier of the Oni bloodline to be successfully activated in over a century. Now he stood at the edge of the training ground where he was supposed to meet her, watching as she approached through the light rain. She moved with her usual grace, seemingly unbothered by the weather. You look troubled, she observed as she drew near. Did the meditation not help? Naruto stiffened. How did she know about that? Reading his expression, Kira smiled. I have sources in the village. Did you think Lady Tsunade would allow me to train you without surveillance of her own? It was a reasonable explanation, but after reading the scroll, Naruto found himself analyzing her every word for hidden meanings. The meditation helped, he said, deciding to play along for now. But I had strange dreams afterward. Dreams are common during bloodline awakening, Kira replied, beginning her usual circuit of the clearing. The subconscious mind processing the changes occurring in your body. These were more like memories. Naruto said carefully, but not my own. Places I've never been, people I've never met. Kira stopped, genuine interest lighting her violet eyes. Ancestral memory. Fascinating. The Oni were said to carry the experiences of their forebears in their blood, a living record of their lineage. Is that why you're so interested in me? Naruto asked, the question slipping out before he could reconsider. Because of what might be locked in my blood. Something flickered across Kira's face. Surprise, perhaps, or caution. I'm interested in you because you represent a living connection to powers thought lost to time. What scholar wouldn't be fascinated? It was a deflection, not an answer. Naruto decided to push harder. These abilities, absorbing chakra, sensing energy patterns, they're just the beginning, aren't they? What else will I be able to do when the bloodline fully awakens? Kira studied him for a long moment before responding. The legends speak of Oni who could manipulate reality itself, bending space and time, crossing dimensional boundaries, even creating pocket realms governed by their own laws of physics. Like gods, Naruto said, echoing her earlier description. Like gods, she agreed. A hint of reverence in her voice. But such power comes at a price. The more the Oni bloodline expresses itself, the further you move from humanity. What does that mean, exactly? Naruto demanded. Will I turn into some kind of monster? Not a monster, Kira corrected. Something more. The black markings will become permanent, your physical form increasingly mutable. Your perception of time will alter, along with your needs, your desires. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You'll hunger for more than food, Naruto. Chakra will become your sustenance, power your addiction. The clinical detachment in her voice sent a chill down Naruto's spine. It matched the tone of the laboratory notes perfectly. And that doesn't bother you? He asked. The thought of me losing my humanity. Why should it? Kira countered. Humanity is merely one form of existence, neither superior nor inferior to others. The Oni represented a different path of evolution, one that might have dominated this world if not for their near extinction. In that moment, Naruto knew Akane had been telling the truth. No scholar, no matter how dedicated, spoke with such personal investment. This was the voice of someone with a vision, a purpose that transcended academic interest. Where's Kakashi-sensei? He asked, suddenly aware they were alone. Yamato. Tsunade said all our sessions would be supervised. They were delayed, Kira said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I thought we might use the opportunity for more advanced training. Something I'd rather not demonstrate with Konoha Shinobi watching. Quote, warning bells rang in Naruto's mind. What kind of training? Instead of answering, Kira's hands blurred through a series of unfamiliar seals. The air around them shimmered, and Naruto felt a subtle shift in the environment, as if they'd stepped slightly out of phase with the rest of the world. A privacy barrier, Kira explained. What I'm about to show you might be misunderstood by others. Naruto tensed, ready to defend himself if necessary. But Kira made no aggressive moves. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves, revealing forearms covered in black markings, not identical to his, but unmistakably similar in their swirling patterns. You have the bloodline too, Naruto breathed, pieces clicking into place. Not naturally, Kira admitted. But after decades of research, I found ways to incorporate certain aspects, a pale reflection of what you carry, but enough to understand its potential. Your Shinzoku, Naruto said, no longer a question but an accusation. Kira's expression remained calm, almost pleased. I founded Shinzoku, yes. After discovering references to the Oni in ancient texts, I became obsessed. The power they wielded, the understanding they possessed, it could transform our world. By turning people into chakra-draining monsters. By elevating humanity, Kira corrected. Imagine a world where energy could be freely shared. Where barriers between dimensions could be crossed, where the artificial limitations of our physical forms could be transcended. At what cost? Naruto demanded. How many children have you experimented on? How many lives have you destroyed in pursuit of this vision? Something hardened in Kira's eyes. Sacrifices are necessary for progress. The children were unfortunate, but their contributions advanced our understanding immeasurably. Children like Akane. The name clearly caught Kira by surprise. Her composure slipped, revealing a flash of genuine anger. Subject A7 contacted you. Interesting. I wondered where she'd fled after the attack. She told me everything, Naruto said, hoping to provoke more revelations. About the experiments, about your real plans for me. Did she? Kira recovered quickly, her voice regaining its scholarly detachment. Then you know I've dedicated my life to understanding and reviving the Oni bloodline. What you may not realize is why. She began to circle Naruto. Her movements predatory despite her calm demeanor. The world is changing, Naruto. Great powers rise and fall, villages wage wars with weapons of increasing destructiveness. The age of shinobi is reaching its zenith, and after the zenith comes decline, collapse. So this is about power? Naruto asked, tracking her movement. Creating the ultimate weapon. It's about evolution, Kira corrected. The Oni weren't just powerful, they were adaptable. They could absorb and integrate any form of chakra, any bloodline they encountered. In a world of ever-escalating threats, adaptability is the only guarantee of survival. Despite himself, Naruto found a certain logic in her words. Hadn't he witnessed firsthand the cycles of vengeance and destruction that plagued the shinobi world? The ever-increasing arsenals of jutsu and bloodlines turned toward warfare. You still haven't answered my question, he said, refocusing. What do you want from me specifically? Kira stopped her circling, meeting his gaze directly. I want you to become what you were always meant to be, The first true Oni in a millennium. A bridge between what humanity is and what it could become. And then you help us awaken others, she said, as if this were the most natural progression imaginable. There are more carriers of dormant Oni blood in the world than you might think, diluted, yes, but present. With the right catalyst, administered by someone who already carries the active bloodline. The implication was clear. Naruto would become patient zero in an epidemic of awakening bloodlines. The thought was both terrifying and, in some deeply buried part of him, intriguing. I won't be your weapon, he said firmly. Not a weapon, Kira insisted. A catalyst, a harbinger. What happens after the awakening is entirely up to the individual, that's the beauty of it. Some might use the power for conquest, others for creation or discovery. And the children you've experimented on. Was that their choice? A flicker of something. Not quite regret, but perhaps acknowledgement, crossed Kira's face. Science requires sacrifice. Their suffering advanced our understanding, made your awakening possible. My awakening was an accident, Naruto countered. I was wounded on a mission that had nothing to do with Shinzoku. Kira's smile returned, tinged with satisfaction. There are no accidents in my work, Naruto. The missing nin your team encountered. Shinzoku operatives. The blade that cut you. Coated with a catalyst specifically designed for your genetic profile, based on samples we've been collecting for years. Samples. Naruto felt sick. You've been stalking me. Monitoring. Kira corrected. Hair from your apartment. Blood from training grounds after particularly strenuous sessions. Nothing invasive. Nothing invasive. Naruto repeated incredulously. You triggered a transformation that's rewriting my entire body without my knowledge or consent. A transformation that was your birthright, Kira said. Her voice hardening. One that would have occurred naturally in time, though perhaps not as efficiently. I merely accelerated the process. Naruto's anger flared, and with it, the Oni chakra. Black markings spread across his skin, responding to his emotions. You had no right. Rights are a human construct, Kira replied, unmoved by his display. The Oni understood something deeper, the natural law of evolution. The strong adapt, the weak perish. Is that what happened to the other children in your experiments? They were too weak, so they perished. For the first time, genuine emotion flickered across Kira's face, not guilt, but a clinical sort of disappointment. Most were incompatible with even the modified bloodline. Their systems rejected it, often, violently. Like Akane, Subject A7 was our most promising result before you, Kira admitted. A partial activation, stable but limited. Her escape is, unfortunate. She lacks the context to understand the importance of our work. She understands enough to know what you're doing is wrong, Naruto shot back. Kira sighed, as if explaining a simple concept to a child. Morality is relative, Naruto. A century from now, when Oni walk among humans as guides and protectors, when bloodline warfare is obsolete because all can share in the same power, history will view our work differently. If you believe that, why the secrecy? Why infiltrate Konoha under false pretenses? Would Lady Tsunade have welcomed me if I'd announced my intention to awaken your dormant bloodline? Kira asked dryly. The world isn't ready for the truth yet. It needs to be guided toward acceptance. The barrier around them flickered slightly. Someone was attempting to break through from the outside. Kakashi or Yamato, most likely. Realizing something was wrong, Kira noticed it too. It seems our private conversation is coming to an end. A pity, there's so much more I wanted to share with you. Like what? Naruto asked, trying to keep her talking while the barrier weakened. Like the true nature of the Oni, she said, seemingly unconcerned by the impending interruption. They weren't simply an ancient bloodline, Naruto. They were visitors, beings from beyond the dimensional veil who found our world and chose to remain, interbreeding with humans and creating the first bloodlines. Despite himself, Naruto was captivated by this revelation. Visitors. From where? A realm where chakra is as common as air, where physical forms are mutable, where the boundaries between thought and reality are permeable. Her eyes gleamed with fervor. A realm we might access again, with the right key. And I'm that key, Naruto guessed. You could be, Kira acknowledged. If you embrace what you're becoming instead of fighting it. The barrier shimmered more violently as multiple chakra signatures pressed against it from outside. Consider carefully what I've told you, Kira said, her hands forming new seals. Konoha will try to suppress your awakening, to preserve the Naruto they know. But that Naruto is already fading, making way for something greater. Before he could respond, the barrier collapsed entirely, revealing Kakashi, Yamato, and a squad of Anbu surrounding them. Kira didn't seem surprised or concerned. Step away from him, Kakashi ordered, Sharingan exposed and focused on Kira. Our session was just concluding. She replied calmly, lowering her hands. Naruto has made remarkable progress today. Naruto. Kakashi's gaze shifted to him, questioning. For a heartbeat, Naruto hesitated. He could expose Kira now. Reveal everything he'd learned about her connection to Shinzoku. But something held him back. Not loyalty to her, but curiosity about the knowledge she possessed. If she were imprisoned or executed, the truth about the Oni bloodline might be lost with her. We were training, he said finally. Kira was explaining more about how the bloodline works. He could tell Kakashi didn't entirely believe him. But his former teacher simply nodded. Lady Tsunade wants to see you both. Immediately. Of course, Kira said smoothly. I'd be happy to report on Naruto's progress. As they were escorted back toward the village, Kira fell into step beside Naruto, speaking low enough that only he could hear. Wise decision, she murmured. There's so much more you need to learn, knowledge that would die with me. Quote, I didn't do it for you, Naruto replied quietly. But I want the truth. All of it, before I decide what to do next. Kira's smile was enigmatic. The truth has many facets, Naruto. The question is which ones you're prepared to accept. Tsunade was not alone in her office. Shizune stood at her usual position behind the desk, while Sakura waited near the window, tension evident in her posture. Most surprising was the presence of an Anbu captain Naruto recognized by his mask, Tiger, one of the most senior operatives in the village. What happened? Tsunade demanded without preamble as they entered. A training exercise, Kira replied smoothly. I was demonstrating advanced chakra manipulation techniques that required privacy. Privacy from whom? The Hokage asked sharply. The Jonin I specifically assigned to supervise. From potential observers outside the village, Kira said. The barrier was a precaution, nothing more. Tsunade's amber eyes narrowed. A precaution that blocked even Anbu surveillance techniques. Convenient. Kira met her gaze without flinching. The Oni bloodline is coveted by more than just Shinzoku. I thought it prudent to ensure our training remained confidential. And what exactly were you training? Sakura interjected, her concern for Naruto evident in her voice. Before Kira could answer, Naruto spoke up. She was showing me how to control the absorption ability, to take only specific types of chakra from a source. It wasn't entirely a lie, though it omitted the more significant revelations of their conversation. Naruto could feel Kakashi's gaze on him, assessing the partial truth. I see, Tsunade said, clearly unconvinced. She turned to the Anbu captain. Report. Tiger stepped forward. We've completed our investigation into Kira's background. Much of what she claimed checks out. She is indeed a scholar specializing in extinct bloodlines, with publications in respected journals. However, he continued, there are significant gaps in her history. Periods where she seems to vanish completely, only to resurface years later with new research. And we found this. He placed a folder on Tsunade's desk. The Hokage opened it, examining its contents with a deepening frown. Care to explain this? She asked, turning the folder so Kira could see. Naruto caught a glimpse of a faded photograph, a younger K. Ira standing alongside a group of robed figures, one of whom bore a striking resemblance to Mizuki, the Shinzoku priestess who had attacked him. Academic colleagues, Kira said without hesitation. Ram, a symposium on pre-Sage era chakra theory in the Land of Iron, 15 years ago. Many scholars in my field maintain communication across national boundaries. And the fact that this woman, Tsunade, tapped the image of Mizuki, led an attack on our village is mere coincidence. Hardly, Kira replied. Many who study ancient powers eventually seek to claim them. Mizuki was once a brilliant researcher before ambition corrupted her purpose. Our paths diverged long ago. It was a plausible explanation, delivered with perfect composure. But Naruto, increasingly sensitive to the subtle shifts in chakra around him, Detected the careful control Kira was exerting, the deliberate steadiness of her pulse, the measured flow of her energy. She was lying, and doing it expertly. Lady Tsunade, Naruto said, drawing all eyes to him. I'd like to continue training with Kira. Surprise flickered across multiple faces, Sakura's most prominently. Why? Tsunade asked bluntly. Because regardless of her past associations, she understands this bloodline better than anyone else, Naruto replied honestly. And I need to understand it if I'm going to control it. Even if she might have ulterior motives. Kakashi asked quietly. Naruto met his former teacher's gaze. Everyone has ulterior motives, Kakashi-sensei. At least with Kira, I know what I'm getting, knowledge about what's happening to me. Tsunade studied him intently, as if trying to determine whether he was being manipulated or making a calculated decision of his own. Very well, she said finally. The training continues, but with additional precautions. No privacy barriers, 2 Jonin supervisors at all times, and daily medical evaluations to monitor the bloodline's progression. She fixed Kira with a hard stare. One wrong move, nay sign that you're pushing Naruto towards something dangerous, and you'll find yourself in a cell so deep even your Shinzoku friends won't find you. Clear, perfectly, Kira replied, unruffled. My NLY goal is to help Naruto master his abilities. How he uses them is entirely his choice. As they were dismissed, Sakura caught Naruto's arm in the hallway. Can I talk to you? Alone, he nodded, lowering her to a quiet alcove away from prying ears. What are you doing? She demanded once they were private. You know she's hiding something. Of course she is, Naruto agreed. But she also knows more about the Oni bloodline than anyone alive. I need that knowledge, Sakura. At what cost? Sakura's green eyes were intense with worry. The meditation helped, but it's a temporary measure at best. The bloodline is still advancing. I could see the changes in your chakra network just from yesterday. I know, Naruto said quietly. I can feel it happening. That's why I need to understand it better, to stay ahead of the changes. To maintain control. Sakura's expression softened. I'm worried about you, not just physically, but, you're different, Naruto. Subtly, but I can see it. The way you speak, the way you analyze situations, it's not like you. Her observation struck uncomfortably close to home. Naruto had noticed the changes himself. Increased perceptiveness, a strange detachment when considering problems. A calculating quality to his thoughts that had never been present before. I'm still me, he insisted, as much to reassure himself as her. Just adapting to what's happening. Are you sure about that? Sakura asked gently, or is the bloodline adapting you to it? Before he could answer, a commotion erupted at the end of the hallway, shouts and the sound of running feet. Naruto and Sakura exchanged a glance before hurrying toward the noise. They found a crowd gathered around one of the large windows overlooking the village. People were pointing at the sky, expressions ranging from confusion to alarm. What's happening? Sakura asked, pushing through to see. One of the Chunin turned to her. Look, above Konoha, the sky had taken on a strange, rippling quality, as if the very air were being distorted. Colors shifted and warped, forming patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. What is that? Someone whispered. As if in answer, the distortion intensified, forming a swirling vortex directly above the center of the village. For a moment, it hung there, pulsing with energy. Then, with a sound like tearing fabric, it split open. Through the tear, Naruto glimpsed something. A landscape unlike anything he'd ever seen. Floating islands beneath a crimson sky, structures that defied the laws of physics, and moving among them, shapes that weren't quite human. The vision lasted only seconds before the tear sealed itself, the distortion fading as quickly as it had appeared. But in those few moments, Naruto felt a profound resonance, a sense of recon. Ishin that came not from memory but from something deeper, encoded in his very blood. Home, whispered the ancient voice within him. The first realm. As the crowd buzzed with confusion and speculation, Naruto caught sight of Kira watching him from across the hall, her expression a mixture of triumph and anticipation. It's beginning, she mouthed, her words meant for him alone. And deep in his transforming cells, in the black markings that pulsed beneath his skin, Naruto knew she was right. Whatever was happening to him, whatever he was becoming, it had implications far beyond his own existence. The barrier between worlds was thinning, and somehow, he was the key. The emergency meeting convened within the hour. The council chamber was filled to capacity, elders, clan heads, Jonin commanders. All gathered to address the phenomenon that had appeared over their village. Naruto sat between Kakashi and Sakura, acutely aware of the sidelong glances directed his way. Word of his changing condition had spread, and more than a few were making the connection between his awakening bloodline and the tear in the sky. Tsunade called the meeting to order, her expression grave. As you've all witnessed, an unprecedented event occurred above Konoha today. Our sensory division reports it was a dimensional distortion, a temporary opening between our world and somewhere else. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Do we know what caused it? Shikaku Nara asked, his shrewd eyes briefly flicking toward Naruto. Not with certainty, Tsunade replied carefully. But it coincides with recent developments regarding a previously dormant bloodline. All pretense of discretion vanished as every gaze turned to Naruto. He sat straighter, refusing to shrink under their scrutiny. The Oni bloodline, Elder Kaharu said, disapproval evident in her tone. We were told it was being monitored and controlled. It is, Tsunade assured her. Naruto has been working diligently to master these new abilities. Yet a hole opens in the sky above our village, Danzo observed from his place among the elders. A coincidence, Lady Hokage. I don't believe in coincidences, Tsunade replied sharply. Which is why I've brought someone who might provide insight. She gestured to Kira, who stood near the wall. You claimed expertise in the Oni bloodline. What can you tell us about what we witnessed today? Kira stepped forward, addressing the council with the confident air of a scholar presenting research. The phenomenon you observed was indeed connected to the Oni bloodline, though not directly caused by it. Rather, it was a response to its awakening. Explain, Tsunade ordered. The Oni were not originally of this world, Kira said, echoing what she'd told Naruto earlier. They came from another realm. One where the laws of chakra are fundamentally different. When a true Oni bloodline awakens after centuries of dormancy, it creates resonances. Echoes that travel across dimensional boundaries. Are you suggesting this will happen again? Hiyashi Hyuga asked, his pale eyes narrowed. Almost certainly, Kira confirmed. And with increasing frequency and duration as the bloodline continues to develop. The implications sent a fresh wave of muttering through the chamber. Then the solution is clear, Danzo said coldly. The bloodline must be suppressed, by whatever means necessary. That may not be possible, Kira countered. Once awakened, the Oni bloodline cannot be simply deactivated. Attempts to suppress it could destabilize it further, potentially causing more severe dimensional disturbances. So we do nothing, Kaharu demanded. Allow these rifts to continue appearing over our village, possibly endangering our citizens. Not nothing, Kira said. But rather than fighting the inevitable, we should focus on guiding the awakening. With proper training, Naruto could learn to control not just the bloodline itself, but its effects on the dimensional boundaries. And you would provide this training, I presume. Danzo's tone made his suspicion clear. I am the most qualified, Kira replied without false modesty. Tsunade raised a hand, silencing the debate. Before we decide anything, I want to hear from Naruto himself. She turned to him. You've been uncharacteristically quiet. What's your perspective on all this? All eyes returned to him, expectant. Naruto took a moment to gather his thoughts. Aware that his response would likely determine not just his own fate, but potentially the village's approach to the situation. The bloodline is changing me, he said finally, opting for honesty. I can feel it happening. New abilities emerging, new ways of perceiving the world. But I'm still me, still Naruto Uzumaki of the Hidden Leaf. He looked around the chamber, meeting the gazes of people who had watched him grow from troublemaking child to respected shinobi. I don't know if what happened today was because of me, he continued. But if it was, then I have a responsibility to learn to control it. Not just for my sake, but for everyone's. And if control proves impossible, Danzo pressed, if these rifts continue to appear, possibly growing large enough for whatever lies on the other side to cross over. Naruto met the elder's gaze directly. Then I'll face that problem too. I've never run from a challenge before. I'm not starting now. His simple Declaration seemed to resonate with many in the chamber, particularly those who knew him well. Kakashi placed a supportive hand on his shoulder, while Sakura nodded approvingly beside him. Well said, Tsunade commented. She turned back to the council. For now, we proceed with caution. Naruto will continue training to master the bloodline, under increased supervision. Meanwhile, our barrier Team W will develop countermeasures for these dimensional rifts, should they become truly dangerous. As the meeting disbanded, Naruto found himself surrounded by a mix of supportive comrades and wary observers. Iruka pushed through the crowd to reach him, concern evident in his former teacher's eyes. Are you really okay? He asked quietly. I'm managing, Naruto replied with a small smile. One day at a time. If anyone can handle this, it's you, Iruka said, squeezing his shoulder. Just don't try to face it alone. That's always been your biggest weakness. I won't, Naruto promised, grateful for the reminder. As the crowd thinned, he noticed Kira watching him from across the chamber, her expression unreadable. Despite everything he now knew about her, despite the manipulation and lies, he remained his best source of information about what he was becoming. For now, that made her both adversary and ally, a contradiction he would have to navigate carefully in the days ahead. Night had fallen by the time Naruto returned to his apartment, exhaustion weighing on him after the day's events. The meditation scroll Sakura had given him lay open on the floor where he'd left it, a reminder of his temporary respite the previous night. He was about to begin the exercise again when a soft tap at his window drew his attention. For a moment, he thought Akane had returned, but the chakra signa Chure was unfamiliar, controlled but potent. Cautiously, he approached, ready to defend himself if necessary. The figure perched on his sill was obscured by a hooded cloak, face hidden in shadow. Naruto Uzumaki, a woman's voice called softly. May I enter? I come with information about your condition. Who are you? Naruto demanded, not moving to open the window. The figure pushed back her hood, revealing striking features, high cheekbones, deep blue eyes, and long white hair that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. She appeared to be in her 30s, though something about her eyes suggested far greater age. My name is Rei, she said. I am the guardian of the Temple of Echoing Whispers in the Land of Demons. And I believe I can help you understand what you're becoming. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Crimson Path. The moonlight cast Rei's features in sharp relief as she sat cross-legged on Naruto's floor, her white hair glowing like spun silver. Despite her strange appearance and unannounced arrival, she exuded a calming presence that put Naruto at ease. The Temple of Echoing Whispers, she explained, hands cradled around the tea Naruto had offered, has stood in the land of demons for over a millennium. We are the keepers of knowledge regarding entities that exist beyond the veil of our world, including the beings you call Oni. You know about the Oni bloodline? Naruto asked, sitting across from her. More than that, Rei replied. We have preserved their history, their true nature, from a time before the Sage of Six Paths walked this earth. She studied him with those ancient blue eyes. History that has been selectively interpreted by others with their own agendas. Like Kira, Naruto surmised. Rei nodded. She is not entirely wrong in what she tells you, but Ruth fragmented is often more dangerous than outright lies. Then tell me the whole truth, Naruto urged. What are the Oni, really? Where did they come from? Rei set down her tea and extended her palm. Above it, chakra coalesced into a swirling orb of light that expanded, forming miniature landscapes and figures, a visual storytelling technique Naruto had never seen before. Long ago, she began. As the light shaped itself into alien landscapes similar to what Naruto had glimpsed through the rift, there existed a realm of pure chakra, where energy and matter were interchangeable, where thought could shape reality. The beings there lived in harmony with this energy, drawing it in and releasing it as naturally as breathing. The light shifted, showing humanoid figures with flowing, ethereal forms. These were the Oni in their original state, not demons or monsters, but creatures of pure chakra. They discovered our world by accident, when the barriers between dimensions thinned during a celestial alignment. The display changed again, showing the ethereal beings crossing through a rift similar to what had appeared over Konoha. They were fascinated by our realm, so different from their own. Solid, fixed, Governed by different laws, some chose to remain, taking physical form to explore this new world. Taking physical form, Naruto interrupted. How? By merging with human hosts, Rei explained. Her light display showing the ethereal beings entering human bodies. It was not possession as we understand it, but a true fusion, the Oni essence and the human spirit becoming something new together. This revelation struck Naruto deeply. It aligned with what he'd been experiencing, not a foreign entity trying to take control, but a merging of different aspects within himself. Quote, "These first Oni human hybrids discovered they retained certain abilities from their original realm," Rei continued. They could perceive and manipulate chakra in ways humans could not, could shift between solid and energy states. Could even create small pockets of reality that followed the laws of their home dimension. The display showed figures with markings similar to those that appeared on Naruto's skin performing miraculous feats, absorbing energy, shifting form, creating portals. For generations, they lived among humans, occasionally interbreeding, diluting their essence but spreading it wide. They became the progenitors of what you now call bloodlines, special abilities carried in the blood. But something happened, Naruto guessed. They disappeared. Rei nodded, her expression solemn as the light display darkened, showing conflict and destruction. As with many beings of great power, some used their abilities selfishly, setting themselves up as gods among humans, demanding worship and tribute. Others, who saw humans as equals, opposed them. A war erupted among the Oni themselves, devastating ancient civilizations. The images showed a catastrophic battle, powers clashing that dwarfed anything in modern warfare. In the aftermath, the surviving Oni made a decision. They would retreat from human affairs, sealing away much of their power and living in seclusion. Over centuries, as they continued to interbreed with humans, their distinctive abilities became increasingly rare and diluted. The light faded, leaving only a small, pulsing ember in Rei's palm. By the time of the Sage of Six Paths, only a handful of true Oni remained. The sage, himself descended from Oni on one side of his lineage, established a new system of chakra use, ninjutsu, based partly on Oni techniques but simplified. Codified for human use, Rei closed her hand, extinguishing the light entirely. And now, after 1,000 years, the bloodline awakens again in you, Naruto Uzumaki. Not diluted, not partial, but in its original potency. Naruto absorbed this information, finding that it resonated with his experiences far more than Kira's clinical explanations or the village's fearful speculations. "The voice I hear," he said slowly, "the presence that feels like part of me but older, wiser, is that the Oni essence," Rei confirmed. "Not a separate consciousness exactly, but the awakening of ancestral memory. Of knowledge encoded in your very cells. And the rift that appeared today, a response to your awakening," she explained. "Your blood remembers its origin. As your power grows, it resonates across dimensional boundaries, calling to its source. That's what Kira wants," Naruto realized. "She's trying to use me to open a permanent gateway to the Oni realm." "Yes," Rei said grimly. "Though I doubt she fully comprehends what that would mean. The Oni realm exists in a state of pure chakra. If our worlds were to fully merge, or even connect too broadly, the consequences would be catastrophic. So I need to stop it," Naruto concluded. "To prevent these rifts from forming." "Not exactly," Rei corrected. "The resonance is a natural consequence of your awakening bloodline. Attempting to suppress it completely would be like trying to stop your heart from beating, possible, but lethal." "Then what do I do?" Naruto asked, frustration edging his voice. "You learn balance," Rei said simply. "Not suppression, not uncontrolled expression, but harmony between your human nature and your Oni heritage." She reached into her robes and withdrew a small, ornate box carved from dark wood. Strange symbols adorned its surface, glowing faintly in the dim light of the apartment. "This contains techniques developed by the original Oni human hybrids," she explained, offering it to him. "Ways to channel the bloodline's power without losing yourself to it, to control the dimensional resonance without tearing the veil completely." Naruto accepted the box cautiously. "Why give this to me? Why help me at all?" "Because the Temple of Echoing Whispers has awaited this moment for centuries," Rei said, her blue eyes intense. "We've preserved the knowledge of the Oni not to resurrect their power for conquest or transformation, but to ensure that when the bloodline inevitably reawakened, its bearer would have the wisdom to use it responsibly. She rose gracefully to her feet. I must return to the temple. There are preparations to make, ancient wards to reinforce now that the resonance has begun. Will I see you again? Naruto asked, standing with her. Soon, Rei promised. When you're ready to learn the deeper techniques. She moved to the window, then paused. Be wary of Kira. She tells partial truths but conceals her ultimate goal, a goal that would doom both our world and the Oni realm. What goal? Quote, transcendence, Rei said softly. The merging of all realms into one, with herself as its architect. A new reality shaped by her will, free from what she sees as the limitations of our separate worlds. With those ominous words, she slipped out the window and vanished into the night, leaving Naruto alone with the box and a head full of revelations. He opened it carefully, finding inside a small scroll and a crystalline object that pulsed with inner light. The scroll, when unrolled, revealed diagrams and instructions written in an ancient script that he shouldn't have been able to read, yet somehow, he understood perfectly. The Oni bloodline was already changing him in ways he hadn't anticipated, unlocking knowledge embedded in his very DNA. As he studied the techniques described in the scroll, Naruto felt a new sense of determination. If what Rei said was true, he wasn't just fighting for control of his own body and mind, but potentially for the stability of multiple realities. The path ahead would be difficult, balanced on a knife's edge between power and responsibility, between transformation and preservation of his humanity. But for the first time since the bloodline had awakened, he felt he had a guide that wasn't pushing him toward someone else's agenda. Dawn was breaking by the time he finally set the scroll aside and attempted sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New confrontations with Kira and her half-truths, new training to master both his growing abilities and their dangerous resonances. But at least now, he wasn't navigating blind. The training ground was shrouded in early morning mist as Naruto arrived, finding Kira already waiting. Today, as ordered by Tsunade, 2 Jonin supervisors were present, Kakashi and, somewhat surprisingly, Kurenai Yuhi, whose genjutsu expertise would be valuable in detecting any subtle manipulations. You look tired, Kira observed as Naruto approached. Trouble sleeping. Just a lot on my mind, he replied, not mentioning Rei's visit or the box of ancient techniques now hidden in his apartment. Understandable, Kira said. Yesterday's events have put you at the center of attention, not an entirely comfortable position, despite your usual appetite for acknowledgement. The casual observation struck uncomfortably close to home. Naruto had always sought recognition, but the scrutiny he now faced was different, tinged with fear, suspicion, even reverence from some quarters. It left him feeling isolated in a way simple loneliness never had. Today we focus on something new, Kira continued. The dimensional resonance that manifested yesterday will return, likely stronger. You need to learn to sense it building and, eventually, to control its expression. How? Naruto asked, genuinely curious despite his wariness of her motives. By understanding that the resonance is essentially a form of communication, Kira explained. Your awakening bloodline calls to its source, and the source responds. Like any conversation, it can be guided, moderated. She drew a diagram in the dirt with a stick, concentric circles with wavy lines connecting them. Think of our reality as one circle, the Oni realm as another. The bloodline creates bridges between them, temporary at first, like the rift yesterday, but potentially more stable with time and development. Naruto studied the diagram, reminded of the similar illustrations in Rei's scroll. And I'm supposed to control these bridges. Eventually, Kira confirmed. For now, simply learning to sense when resonance is building would be progress. She glanced at Kakashi and Kurenai. This requires a meditative state. I assume that's acceptable. Kakashi nodded, though his visible eye remained watchful. Proceed. Kira directed Naruto to sit cross-legged on the ground. Close your eyes. Focus on the Oni chakra within you, but don't draw on it actively. Simply observe its patterns, its longings. Naruto complied, falling easily into the meditative state he'd been practicing. The dark energy of the bloodline pulsed beneath his conscious awareness, not aggressive but persistent, like waves against a shore. That's it, Kira's voice guided him. Now, Extend your awareness outward, beyond your physical form. The Oni were natural sensors because they existed partially in a state of pure energy. Tap into that aspect of your heritage. Naruto allowed his consciousness to expand, a technique not entirely different from Sage Mode, though it drew on a different energy source. To his surprise, he found he could say, NSE far beyond the training ground, the village, the forest, even the mountains beyond. But more significantly, he became aware of something else, a thinness in the fabric of reality itself, areas where the boundary between dimensions wasn't quite solid, like membranes stretched too tight, ready to tear. I can feel them, he murmured. Weak spots I don't know how to describe it. Like the air is thinner there. Excellent, Kira said, her voice revealing genuine pleasure at his progress. Those are natural junction points between realms. They've always existed, usually unnoticed by humans. The Oni used them for travel, for communication across dimensional boundaries. Naruto focused on the nearest such point, located somewhere above the Hokage monument. It pulsed with potential, responding to his attention like a tuning fork resonating with a specific frequency. It's reacting to me, he observed with a mixture of fascination and unease. Your bloodline recognizes it, Kira explained. Now, try to calm the resonance. Imagine smoothing the ripples in a pond, stabilizing the boundary rather than thinning it further. Naruto attempted to follow her instruction, visualizing the fragile point strengthening, solidifying. To his surprise, it responded, the agitated energy settling into a more stable pattern. It worked, he said, opening his eyes in amazement. Of course it did, Kira replied, her violet eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The Oni weren't just passive travelers between realms, they were architects, shapers of the very boundaries between worlds. From their positions at the edge of the clearing, Kakashi and Kurenai exchanged a glance, clearly unsettled by abilities that extended beyond the normal scope of ninja techniques. Is this what caused yesterday's rift? Kurenai asked, her expertise in illusory realms making her particularly interested in dimensional phenomena. In part, Kira acknowledged, though that was an unconscious resonance, triggered by the accelerating awakening of Naruto's bloodline. What he just demonstrated is the beginning of conscious control. And these junction points, Kakashi said carefully. How many exist around Konoha? 7 major ones, Kira replied, plus countless minor points of thinning. They occur naturally around concentrations of chakra, villages, sacred sites, battlefields where great powers have clashed. Naruto stood, brushing dirt from his pants. So I can prevent rifts by stabilizing these points. You can regulate them, Kira corrected. Complete prevention would require suppressing your bloodline entirely, which would be both dangerous and, ultimately, futile. The resonance is a natural consequence of what you are becoming. There was that phrase again, what you are becoming. Not who, but what. The distinction bothered Naruto more each time he heard it. I'm still me, he said firmly. The bloodline doesn't change that. Something like pity flickered across Kira's face. Evolution always changes the evolved, Naruto. Fighting that truth only makes the transition more painful. Before he could respond, a disturbance at the edge of the training ground drew their attention. An Anbu had appeared, kneeling respectfully. Lady Hokage requests Naruto Uzumaki's immediate presence, the masked operative reported. There's been an incident at the northern border. Possible Shinzoku activity. Naruto exchanged a glance with Kakashi, who nodded. We'll continue this later, the Jonin told Kira. Kurenai will escort you back to the village. As they departed, Naruto caught Kira watching I.M. with an unreadable expression. Not disappointment or frustration at the interruption, but something more calculating, as if the developments played into some larger plan. Tsunade's office was crowded when they arrived. In addition to Shizune and several Anbu, Naruto was surprised to see Shikamaru present, along with a battle-worn patrol squad just returned from the border. Good, you're here, Tsunade said, gesturing Naruto forward. We have a situation developing. The patrol leader, a scarred Jonin Naruto recognized but didn't know well, stepped forward. Approximately 3 hours ago, our squad encountered a group crossing into Fire Country territory. When challenged, they identified themselves as pilgrims seeking the Awakened One. Me, Naruto guessed, his stomach sinking. The Jonin nodded grimly. They carried this He placed a small, carved figurine on Tsunade's desk, a humanoid form covered in markings identical to those that appeared on Naruto's skin when he accessed the Oni chakra. When questioned further, they became agitated, claiming the time of reunification was approaching. Then this happened. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a blackened, withered arm. One of them grabbed me. It felt like my chakra was being extracted. Naruto stared at the injury, recognizing the effect of Oni chakra absorption, though far cruder and more destructive than anything he'd done, even at his most untrained. Are they Shinzoku? He asked. Unknown, Tsunade replied. They wore no identifying marks, carried no symbols we recognize. But their abilities and their interest in you suggest some connection. Shikamaru, who had been studying a map spread on a side table, joined the conversation. They retreated when our patrol fought back, but didn't flee far. They've established some kind of camp here. He pointed to a location about 5 miles from Konoha's northern border. More concerning, our scouts report others joining them. The group is growing. How many? Kakashi asked. 20 as of the last report, Shikamaru answered. From different directions, different countries, but all converging on this point. And all asking about the awakened one, the patrol leader added. Tsunade fixed Naruto with a penetrating gaze. This is moving beyond a personal transformation, Naruto. You're becoming a focal point for forces we don't fully understand. I didn't ask for this, Naruto said defensively. No one said you did, Tsunade replied, her tone softening slightly. But we need to address it nonetheless. These pilgrims have already injured one of our shinobi. If their numbers continue to grow, they could become a serious threat, Shikamaru finished. Particularly if they all possess some version of the chakra absorption ability. What do you suggest? Naruto asked, looking around the room. We have 2 options, Tsunade said. Disperse them by force, potentially triggering a conflict with abilities we don't fully understand, or attempt calm unification. Find out what they want and why they're gathering. They want me, Naruto said simply. Or what they think I represent. Which is, according to Kira, the Oni bloodline was thought extinct for centuries. If word of its reawakening is spreading. He trailed off, the implications clear. You could be seen as anything from a religious figure to a weapon of power, Kakashi observed. Nay, either scenario is particularly comforting. Shikamaru had been watching Naruto thoughtfully throughout the exchange. There's a third option, he said. We send Naruto to meet with them, under heavy guard. Satisfy their curiosity while demonstrating Konoha's protection. Absolutely not, Tsunade said immediately. The risk is too great. With respect, Lady Hokage, Naruto interjected, Shikamaru's idea makes sense. These people are coming regardless. Better to meet them on our terms than let the situation escalate. And if it's a trap, Tsunade challenged, if Shinzoku is using these pilgrims to draw you out, then we'll handle it, Naruto replied with more confidence than he felt. But ignoring them won't make them go away. If anything, their numbers will grow as word spreads. Avi's silence fell over the office as Tsunade considered the arguments. I don't like it, she finally said. But you may be right. A controlled meeting, strictly on our terms. She turned to Shikamaru. Devise a security plan. I want 3 Jonin squads, perimeter sensors, and emergency extraction protocols. No chances. Yes, Lady Hokage, Shikamaru replied, already mentally formulating strategies. And Naruto, Tsunade continued. Her amber eyes serious, you will remain within our protection at all times. At the first sign of danger, you withdraw. No heroics, no testing your new abilities. Clear, Naruto agreed, though a part of him, the part that pulsed with Oni chakra, was curious about these strangers who sought him out, who seemed to possess fragments of the same power awakening within him. As the meeting broke up and preparations began, Kakashi pulled Naruto aside. You should know, his former teacher said quietly. Kira was extremely interested when she heard about these pilgrims. She asked to accompany the mission. As an expert on the bloodline, Naruto guessed. That was her justification, Kakashi confirmed. Tsunade denied the request, but I wouldn't be surprised. If she finds a way to involve herself nonetheless. She probably knows more about these people than she's letting on, Naruto mused. Maybe they're part of her plan. Or a complication to it, Kakashi suggested. Either way, stay alert. This situation has too many unknown variables for comfort. Naruto nodded, appreciating the warning. As he left the Hokage Tower to prepare for the mission, he couldn't shake the feeling that events were accelerating beyond anyone's control, a convergence of forces set in motion by his awakening bloodline. What had started as a personal transformation was rapidly becoming something much larger, with implications that extended far beyond himself or even Konoha. And somewhere in the shadows, Kira watched and waited, her true endgame still hidden behind layers of half-truths and manipulations. The forest north of Konoha stretched for miles, ancient trees creating a canopy so dense that noon felt like dusk on the forest floor. Naruto moved at the center of a carefully arranged formation, Kakashi and Guy ahead, Kurenai and Shikamaru flanking, two ambush squads spread in a wider perimeter. Half a mile ahead, Kakashi reported quietly. Our scouts confer. M23 individuals in a clearing. No obvious weapons, but they've established some kind of shrine. A shrine, Naruto echoed, unsettled by the implication. Crude but unmistakable, Kakashi confirmed. Centered around a stone carved with markings similar to those that appear on your skin. The thought of being the focus of some kind of religious devotion made Naruto deeply uncomfortable. He'd wanted acknowledgement all his life, but not this kind. Not worship from strangers drawn to a power he barely understood himself. As they approached the edge of the clearing, Naruto extended his senses the way Kira had taught him that morning. Immediately, he detected the gathered chakra signatures ahead, each one containing a faint echo of the energy flowing through his own veins. Not as potent, not as pure, but undeniably related. They have it too, he murmured. Fragments of the Oni bloodline. How is that possible? Shikamaru asked. I thought you were the only carrier. The only active one, Naruto corrected, recalling Kira's explanations. But apparently the dormant bloodline is more widespread than we realized. These people must have enough Oni ancestry to sense the awakening, even if they can't manifest the abilities themselves. They halted just within the tree line, observing the gathering. The pilgrims were a diverse group, different ages, ethnicities, clothing style. Suggesting origins from across the shinobi world. What united them was a strange intensity in their expressions and, Naruto now realized, faint markings visible on the skin of many. In the center of the clearing stood the shrine Kakashi had mentioned, a rough altar of stacked stones, topped with the carved figure and surrounded by small offerings, flowers, scrolls, personal tokens. This is creepier than I expected, Naruto muttered. Religious fervor often is, Kurenai observed quietly. Be careful what you say to them. People driven by belief can be unpredictable. Shikamaru finished his tactical assessment of the situation. No obvious threats, but I don't like the limited exit routes. We'll keep the meeting brief. Naruto nodded, then stepped forward, emerging from the forest into the clearing. The effect was immediate. A ripple of awareness spreading through the gathered pilgrims, heads turning, expressions transforming from expectant to awestruck. The awakened one, someone whispered. The words echoed by others until they became a murmur that filled the clearing. A tall, gaunt man with faded markings spiraling up his neck stepped forward from the group. Despite his weathered appearance, his eyes burned with an unsettling intensity. We felt your awakening, he said, his voice surprisingly melodic. Across mountains and oceans, we felt the blood stirring, calling to what little remains in our own veins. Who are you? Naruto asked, maintaining a careful distance. We are the remnant, the man replied. Descendants of those who once bridged worlds, now reduced to echoes and whispers. He gestured to the others. For generations, our families have preserved what little knowledge remained of our heritage, waiting for the day when true Oni blood would awaken again. And what do you want from me? Naruto asked directly. A woman stepped forward, middle-aged, with the lean physique of a trained fighter and eyes that held more calculation than reverence. What we want varies, she said pragmatically. Some seek guidance, others validation of faith passed down through centuries. Some, her gaze flicked briefly to the withered arm of Konoha's patrol leader, Hope Y. Oh, you might teach them to access abilities that have faded from our bloodlines. And some, added a younger man near the back, simply wished to witness the fulfillment of ancient prophecy, the return of the bridge between worlds. That phrase sent a chill down Naruto's spine, too similar to Kira's talk of gateways and merged realms for comfort. I'm not a bridge or a prophecy, he said firmly. I'm a shinobi of the hidden leaf who happens to have awakened an old bloodline. Nothing more. His declaration was met with knowing smiles and exchanged glances that suggested they heard his denial as modes. Tie or perhaps ignorance of his true significance. The awakening has only begun, the gaunt man said with certainty. In time, you will understand your purpose. The thinning of the veil yesterday was felt by all of us, the first sign of the great reunion to come. Great reunion, Kakashi interjected, stepping forward to stand beside Naruto. The woman answered, when our world and the first realm join once more, as they were always meant to be, when the artificial separation imposed by the Sage of Six Paths finally dissolves. Her explanation aligned too perfectly with what Kira had described as her ultimate goal, the merging of realms. These weren't random pilgrims, they were adherents to the same vision Shinzoku pursued, perhaps without knowing the organization by name. That's not going to happen, Naruto stated clearly. The bloodline doesn't give me the right or the intention to merge worlds. His declaration caused a stir among the gathered remnant. Some looked confused, others disappointed, a few angry. You speak from ignorance, the gaunt man said, his melodic voice hardening. The merger is inevitable, it is written in the very chakra that flows through your veins. You can guide it or resist it, but you cannot prevent what has already begun. If the process truly is inevitable, Shikamaru interjected smoothly, then there's no need to gather here or to seek Naruto out. You could simply wait for events to unfold naturally. The woman's eyes narrowed at the logical trap. There are those who would prevent the reunion, who fear the power it would bring. The awakened one needs protection, guidance. He has both, Kakashi replied, his casual tone belied by the alertness in his stance. Provided by Konoha. A tense silence fell over the clearing. The pilgrims exchanged glances, some appearing ready to argue further, others uncertain. Finally, the gaunt man spoke again. We did not come to challenge Konoha's stewardship, he said carefully. Merely to confirm what we sensed. To offer our knowledge and service to the awakened one when he requires it. And now you have confirmed it, Kurenai said, her tone making it clear the meeting was concluding. Naruto has heard your perspectives and will consider them. The dismissal was polite but firm. After a moment of hesitation, the pilgrims began to disperse, moving back toward their makeshift camp. Only the gaunt man and the woman remained. This isn't the end of our conversation, the woman said, addressing Naruto directly. As your power grows, as the resonances increase in frequency and intensity, you will have questions that only we can answer. And you'll find, the gaunt man added, that those currently guiding you may have motives of their own. When you wish to speak with those who truly understand your heritage, you need only call. We will hear. With those cryptic parting words, they too withdrew, leaving Naruto and his protective detail alone in the clearing. Well, that was disturbing on multiple levels. Shikamaru observed dryly. They're connected to Shinzoku somehow, Naruto said with certainty. The talk of merging worlds, the great reunion, it's exactly what Kira described as her ultimate goal. Possibly without knowing it, Kakashi suggested. They could be unwitting pawns, followers of a belief system Shinzoku cultivated to serve its purposes. Either way, Guy interjected, unusually serious. They represent a complication. If their numbers continue to grow, we could have a small army camped on our northern border, Kurenai finished. People with at least some capacity for Oni abilities, however diluted, and a fervent belief that Naruto is the key to their prophesied reunion of worlds. We should head back, Shikamaru decided. Lady Tsunade needs to hear about this development directly. As they turned to leave, Naruto cast one last glance at the shrine. The carved figure with its swirling markings seemed to watch him, a crude reflection of what he was becoming. For the first time, he truly understood that his transformation wasn't just a personal journey or even a village concern. It was stirring ancient beliefs, awakening dormant powers, setting in motion events that had been waiting centuries to unfold. And he was at the center of it all, still struggling to understand his own changing nature even as others projected their hopes, fears, and prophecies onto him. The journey back to Konoha was tense, everyone processing the implications of what they'd witnessed. Naruto walked in silence, turning over the pilgrim's words in his mind, comparing them with what he'd learned from Kira and Rei. 3 different perspectives on the same phenomenon. Kira's clinical ambition for transcendence, Rei's cautious wisdom about balance, and now the remnant's religious fervor for reunion. All centered around his awakening bloodline, all pushing toward some world-changing culmination. They were nearing the village when Naruto felt it, a sudden pressure behind his eyes. A resonance building within his chakra network. The sensation was familiar from his morning training with Kira, but far more intense. Wait, he called to the others, stopping abruptly. Something's happening. Kakashi was at his side immediately. What is it? The resonance, Naruto explained, struggling to maintain his focus as the pressure built. Like yesterday, but stronger. I can feel it building toward another rift. Can you control it? Kakashi asked urgently. Like you practiced this morning. I'm trying, Naruto said, closing his eyes and reaching for the techniques Kira had taught him. He visualized the thin spot in reality, tried to mentally smooth and stabilize it. For a moment, it seemed to work, the pressure receded slightly. Then it surged back, stronger than before, accompanied by a voice that echoed not in his ears but in his blood. The time approaches. The veil thins. You must prepare. Naruto's eyes snapped open. Did you hear that? The confused expressions around him confirmed they hadn't. Hear what? Shikamaru asked. Before Naruto could explain, the air above them shimmered, colors distorting as they had the previous day. But unlike the first rift, which had formed over the village center, this distortion was directly overhead, and growing rapidly. Everyone back, Kakashi ordered, recognizing the signs of another dimensional tear. They retreated to what seemed a safe distance, watching as the distortion coalesced into a swirling vortex. With a sound like reality itself groaning in protest, it split open, wider than the previous day's rift. Through the tear, Naruto again glimpsed the alien landscape of the Oni realm, floating islands, impossible structures, that crimson sky. But this time, he saw something more, figures moving on the nearest island, tall. Ethereal beings with forms that seemed to shift between solid and energy. One of them approached the rift from the other side, its features becoming clearer as it neared, humanoid but not quite human. With elongated limbs and skin covered in markings that glowed with inner light. It reached toward the opening, not aggressively but with evident purpose. As its hand tended through the rift into their world, Naruto felt a profound resonance in his own body, the black markings of his bloodline emerging spontaneously across his skin in response. Naruto, stay back, Kakashi warned, moving to intercept. But Naruto felt drawn forward by something beyond conscious choice, a recognition that transcended thought. The being on the other side of the rift was kin to whatever was awakening within him. A connection more fundamental than blood or chakra. Before anyone could stop him, Naruto stepped forward, extending his own hand toward the ethereal figure. As their fingertips neared each other, the black markings on his skin flared with brilliant light, mirroring the glow of the being's own patterns. Naruto, don't, Kurenai shouted, but her voice seemed distant, led by the strange energy emanating from the rift. The moment their fingers touched, a surge of information flooded Naruto's consciousness, not words or images exactly, but pure conceptual understanding. Transmitted directly from mind to mind. Descendant. The crossing approaches. The boundaries weaken. Prepare or perish. The contact lasted only seconds before the rift began to collapse, reality reasserting itself. The ethereal being withdrew its hand, its luminous eyes fixed on Naruto until the last moment before the tear sealed completely. As the distortion faded, Naruto staggered backward, overwhelmed by the exchange. Kakashi caught him before he fell, easing him to the ground. What happened? His former teacher demanded. What did you see? Not see, Naruto managed, his voice hoarse. Feel. No. He struggled to translate the pure conceptual information into words. They're aware of what's happening. The beings on the other side, the original Oni. They know the boundaries between worlds are weakening. Due to your bloodline, Shikamaru asked, kneeling beside him. Partly, Naruto admitted, but there's more to it. Something else is affecting the dimensional barriers, something deliberate. He looked up at Kakashi. They're trying to warn us. Warn us about what? Guy asked, unusually solemn. That if the barriers collapse completely, Both worlds suffer, Naruto explained. The understanding becoming clearer as he articulated it. Their realm isn't meant to directly overlap with ours, the laws of reality are too different. A complete merging would destroy both. The implications settled heavily on the group. If Naruto's interpretation was correct, then Kira's goal of transcendence, the merger of realms that the remnant called the Great Reunion, would be catastrophic rather than transformative. We need to get back to the village, Kakashi decided. Lady Tsunade needs to hear this, and we need to reconsider our approach to Kira and her training. As they helped Naruto to his feet, he noticed his hands were still covered in the black markings, but they had changed, become more intricate, more defined, as if the brief contact with the being from the Oni realm accelerated the bloodline's development. And deep within, in the part of his consciousness where the ancient Oni presence dwelled, he felt a new clarity, a strengthening of purpose. The bloodline wasn't meant to merge worlds, but to bridge them safely, to maintain balance between realms, not dissolve the boundaries that kept them distinct. It was a profound revelation, one that directly contradicted Kira's vision of transcendence. And it confirmed what Ray had told him, that truth fragmented was often more dangerous than outright lies. The Hokage's office had become a war room, maps and rapport. TS spread across every surface as Tsunade and her advisors grappled with the rapidly evolving situation. Naruto's account of the second rift and his contact with the being from the Oni realm had only added urgency to their deliberations. 2 rifts in 2 days, each stronger than the last, Tsunade summarized grimly. A growing camp of these remnant pilgrims at our northern border. And now direct contact with entities from another dimension. She fixed Naruto with a penetrating gaze. This is escalating faster than anyone anticipated. It's not just my bloodline causing it, Naruto insisted, repeating what he'd gleaned from the contact. Something else is weakening the barriers deliberately, some external force or process. Kira, Kakashi suggested, or Shinzoku more broadly. The timing is too convenient to be coincidental. Shikamaru, who had been studying a map marked with the locations of both rifts, looked up. There's a pattern forming. The first rift appeared over the village center, near the Hokage Tower. The second, several miles north. If they continue in this progression, they're creating a line, Tsunade realized, seeing where his analysis was heading. A fault line in reality itself. Precisely, Shikamaru confirmed, and if we extrapolate the trajectory, his finger traced northward on the map, stopping at a point beyond Konoha's borders. It leads directly to the land of demons. The Temple of Echoing Whispers, Naruto said immediately, remembering Rei's words. She said they were reinforcing ancient wards now that the resonance had begun. Tsunade asked sharply. Naruto hesitated, then decided complete disclosure was necessary. Rei, a guardian from the temple. She visited me 2 nights ago, bringing information about the Oni bloodline's true nature. Tsunade's expression darkened. And you didn't think to mention this earlier. I was processing what she told me, Naruto admitted. Comparing it to Kira's version, trying to determine which was more trustworthy. And your conclusion? Kakashi asked. After today's contact, I'm certain Rei was telling the truth, Naruto said firmly. The Oni bloodline isn't meant to merge worlds, it's meant to maintain the balance between them. What Kira wants, what she's working toward, would be catastrophic for both realms. Yet she continues to position herself as your mentor, your guide to these abilities, Tsunade observed. Because she needs me, Naruto realized, pieces falling into place. The bloodline gives me influence over the dimensional boundaries that she lacks, despite her research and artificial enhancements. She's been pushing me to develop abilities that serve her goal while concealing their true purpose. And these rifts, Shikamaru theorized, could be her attempts to weaken the barriers enough that a permanent breach becomes possible. Using my bloodline as the catalyst, Naruto finished, anger building at the manipulation. Tsunade's expression was thunderous. I want Kira brought in for questioning. Immediately. That may prove difficult, a new voice interjected from the doorway. They turned to find an Anbu operative, mask askew, leaning heavily against the frame. Blood seeped from a wound in his side. Report, Tsunade ordered, already moving to assist the injured shinobi. Kira is gone, the Anbu managed. When we went to detain her as ordered, we found her quarters empty. She left this. He held out a small scroll sealed with an unfamiliar crest, a swirling pattern reminiscent of the Oni markings. Tsunade took the scroll cautiously, checking for traps before breaking the seal. As she unrolled it, her expression grew increasingly grim. "What does it say?" Naruto asked. "It's addressed to you," Tsunade replied, handing him the scroll. The message was brief but chilling. "Naruto, by now, you've likely begun to question my teachings. Perhaps you've even made contact with those who offer a different perspective on your awakening heritage. Such doubt is natural in the face of transformation. Know this: what I seek is neither destruction nor domination, but evolution. The artificial separation of realms has stunted both our world and the Oni realm for millennia. Reunification is not apocalypse but ascension, the next step in our shared development. The resonances will continue, strengthening with each manifestation. Soon, you will face a choice between remaining as you are, limited, earthbound, or embracing your true potential as the bridge between worlds. When you are ready to fulfill your destiny, you will find me at the source, the place where the boundaries first formed, where they can be unmade. Until then, I leave you with a parting gift, acceleration of what has already begun." Kira. The final line sent a chill through Naruto. A parting gift? What does that mean? As if in answer to his question, a searing pain shot through his body, centered on the spot where his wound had first triggered the bloodline's awakening. He doubled over, gasping as the black markings erupted across his skin, more extensive than ever before. "Naruto!" Sakura cried, rushing to his side. "The catalyst," he managed through gritted teeth. "She must have administered more somehow, something stronger." The pain intensified as the markings spread, no longer confined to his arms and torso but covering him completely. Worse, he could feel the Oni chakra surging uncontrollably, reaching outward, resonating with the weakened points in reality he'd sensed earlier. "It's happening again," he warned. "Another rift, bigger than before. I can't stop it." Even as he spoke, the air in the office began to distort, colors shifting, reality bending. Unlike the previous manifestations, this distortion formed directly around Naruto himself, as if he were the epicenter of the dimensional breach. "Everyone back," Tsunade ordered, recognizing the danger. "No," Naruto countered, fighting through the pain to focus. "I need to control this, direct it." He turned to Kakashi. "The box Ray gave me, it's hidden under the floorboard beneath my bed. Get it, quickly." Kakashi nodded and vanished in a blur of movement. "What's in the box?" Tsunade demanded. "Hell, ping Sakura support Naruto as the distortion intensified around him." "Techniques," Naruto explained between labored breaths. "Ancient methods for channeling the bloodline, controlling its resonance with the dimensional boundaries." The distortion was spreading, the office walls seeming to waver like mirages in desert heat. Through the shifting reality, glimpses of the Oni realm became visible, those floating islands, the crimson sky. Distant figures watching with glowing eyes. "It's too fast," Sakura said urgently. Whatever Kira did is accelerating the process exponentially. That was her intention, Shikamaru realized. To force a breakthrough before Naruto could fully understand or control his abilities. The pain peaked, driving Naruto to his knees. The Oni chakra was overwhelming his system, reshaping him from within, pushing him toward something beyond human. In his mind's eye, he saw what Kira envisioned, a being neither fully human nor Oni, but a hybrid entity capable of existing in both realms simultaneously. Of tearing down the walls between dimensions. "That is not your purpose," the ancient voice within him countered. "Balance, not destruction. Bridge, not breach." Focusing on that voice, Naruto fought to regain control of the surging energy. The meditation techniques Sakura had shared, combined with what little he'd learned from Kira about sensing dimensional resonances, gave him just enough leverage to direct the building power. "I can't stop it completely," he gasped. "But maybe I can channel it, focus it away from the village." With tremendous effort, he visualized the energy flowing along a specific path, upward, away from the people around him, connecting to the natural junction point he'd sensed above the Hokage monument. The distortion responded, condensing from a general warping of reality to a more focused, vertical column extending from Naruto toward the ceiling. The office walls stabilized as the dimensional breach narrowed its effect. "It's working," Tsunade observed. Amazed despite the danger. Not for long, Naruto warned, sweat beading on his forehead from the strain. Without the techniques Ray provided, I can't maintain control. As if summoned by his desperation, Kakashi reappeared, the ornate wooden box in his hands. Got it. Naruto reached for the box with trembling fingers, the black markings on his hands pulsing in recognition of the ancient artifact. When he touched it, the symbols carved into the wood began to glow, responding to his bloodline. Inside, the crystalline object he'd examined briefly the night before now shone with inner light. Acting on instinct rather than instruction, Naruto grasped it in his palm. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The crystal melded with his skin, its structure seeming to flow into the black markings covering his hand. As it did, the chaotic surge of Oni chakra began to organize itself, flowing in structured patterns rather than wild eruptions. What is that? Sakura asked. Ching in fascination as the crystal's essence spread through the markings on Naruto's body. A regulator, Naruto replied, the knowledge coming to him as the crystal integrated with his system. Ted by the first Oni-human hybrids to control the resonance between realms. With the crystal's influence stabilizing his chakra, Naruto found he could direct the dimensional energy with far greater precision. The vertical column of distortion tightened further, becoming a focused beam that extended through the ceiling toward the junction point above. I need to get outside, he said, rising to his feet with newfound strength. Somewhere away from people, where I can safely release this energy. The Hokage monument, Tsunade decided immediately. The plateau above the faces. It's clear of civilians and provides a defensible position if something goes wrong. Supported by Kakashi and Sakura, Naruto made his way out of the office and through the village. As they passed, villagers stared in shock at his transformed appearance. Body covered in glowing black markings, a column of distorted reality extending upward from his position like a beacon connecting earth to sky. By the time they reached the monument plateau, the pressure had built to nearly unbearable levels. The rift was trying to fully manifest, held in check only by Naruto's will and the regulating influence of the crystal. Everyone stay back, he warned, moving to the center of the open space. I don't know exactly what will happen when I release control. His companions retreated to a safe distance, forming a protective perimeter around the plateau. Alone in the center, Naruto closed his eyes, focusing on the techniques described in Rei's scroll. Guide, don't force. Channel, don't contain. The flow between realms is natural. Your role is to ensure it remains balanced. Following this guidance, Naruto stopped fighting the resonance and instead surrendered to it, not passively, but with directed intention. Rather and trying to prevent the rift from forming, he focused on shaping it, controlling its size and duration. The effect was immediate. The column of distortion expanded upward, connecting with the natural junction point in the sky above. Where they merged, a controlled rift opened, smaller than the previous breaches, its edges smooth and stable rather than jagged and fluctuating. Through this carefully shaped window between worlds, Naruto again saw the Oni realm. But this time, with the regulator integrated into his system, he perceived it with greater clarity, not just its physical aspects, but the underlying patterns of energy that composed it, so different from the structured chakra of his own world. A figure approached the rift from the other side, the same ethereal being that had reached through during their earlier encounter. Now, with the boundary stabilized, it was able to manifest more fully, its form becoming clearer as it neared the threshold. It was undeniably humanoid, yet profoundly different, taller than any human. With elongated limbs and features that seemed to shift subtly from moment to moment. Its skin was covered in markings identical to those now covering Naruto's body, glowing with inner light. Most striking were its eyes, pools of luminous energy that held wisdom accumulated over eons. Bridge child, its voice resonated directly in Naruto's mind. You begin to understand. Who are you? Naruto asked, speaking aloud though he sensed the being could perceive his thoughts directly. I am Kato, guardian of boundaries in the realm you call Oni. What you experience Ao was foretold, the awakening of true Oni blood in the human world after centuries of dormancy. Hira says the boundaries between our worlds should be dissolved completely, Naruto said, testing the being's reaction. That reunification is our natural state. Something like sorrow passed through Kato's luminous eyes. A dangerous misunderstanding, born of fragmentary knowledge. Our realms were never meant to fully merge. The consequences would be catastrophic for both. Then what is the purpose of these connections? Of my bloodline? Balance, Kato replied. Exchange. Harmony between different states of existence. The Oni who chose to remain in your world did so as guardians of this balance, using their dual nature to ensure neither realm dominated the other. The explanation aligned perfect Why with what Ray had told him and with the understanding he'd gained during their brief contact earlier. It stood in stark contrast to Kira's vision of transcendence through merger. But something went wrong, Naruto guessed. The guardians disappeared. They were hunted, Kato confirmed. By those who feared their power or coveted it for themselves. The Sage of Six Paths, though partly of Oni descent himself, believed humanity needed to develop its own relationship with chakra, free from our influence. He established barriers that made crossing between realms more difficult, that suppressed the manifestation of Oni abilities in those of mixed heritage. And now those barriers are weakening, Naruto said, understanding dawning. Not just because of my bloodline awakening, but because of something Kira is doing. Yes, Kato's mental voice grew urgent. She has discovered ancient methods of weakening the dimensional boundaries, methods that were forbidden even in the time of free passage between our realms. She believes she works toward ascension, but her actions risk collapse. How do I stop her? Naruto asked. You must master your heritage fully, not just the abilities it grants, but its true purpose. The temple guardian who came to you has knowledge that will help. Seek her guidance. Ray, Naruto confirmed, from the Temple of Echoing Whispers. A sacred place, built upon the original nexus between our realms. Kato explained, the point where the first crossing occurred, where the boundaries are naturally thinnest. It is there that Kira will attempt her final working, and it is there that you must confront her. The rift began to fluctuate, the stability Naruto had established starting to waver as his strength diminished. Maintaining the controlled connection was draining him rapidly. Despite the regulator's assistance, we must part now, Kato observed. But know this, what awakens within you is neither curse nor simple power. It is legacy and responsibility, the heritage of those who stood between worlds, ensuring the safety of both. I understand, Naruto said, and he truly did. For the first time since the bloodline had begun to manifest, he felt a sense of purpose. In the transformation, not Kira's vision of transcendence or the remnant's dream of reunion, but something more balanced, more nuanced. We will speak again, Kato promised as the rift began to close. When you reach the temple. Until then, trust the voice of your blood, it carries the wisdom of countless guardians before you. With those parting words, the being withdrew. The rift sealed itself smoothly, the column of distortion dissipating like mist in morning sunlight. As the connection faded, Naruto felt the surge of Oni chakra subside to manageable levels, the regulator's influence establishing a new equilibrium within his system. The black markings remained visible on his skin, but they no longer pulsed with uncontrolled energy. Instead, they settled into defined patterns, a permanent manifestation of his awakening heritage. As his companions approached cautiously, Naruto turned to face them, aware that his appearance had changed significantly. The markings weren't the only visible difference. His eyes now held a faint luminescence, and his features had subtly altered, becoming sharper, more defined. Naruto, Sakura asked hesitantly, are you okay? I'm still me, he assured her. His voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing on him. But I understand more now. About what's happening, about what needs to be done. You spoke with someone, from the other side, Tsunade observed. What did they tell you? Quote, the truth about the Oni bloodline, Naruto replied. About its purpose, and about what Kira is really trying to do. He looked toward the north, in the direction of the land of demons. She's going to the Temple of Echoing Whispers, the place where the boundaries between realms are naturally thinnest. She plans to collapse them completely. With what purpose? Shikamaru asked, his analytical mind already working through the implications. She believes merging the realms will create a new, transcendent reality, evolution through unification, Naruto explained. But she's wrong. If the boundaries collapse entirely, both worlds will be destroyed in the process. How do we stop her? Kakashi asked, ever practical. Naruto's hand went to his chest. The crystal regulator had integrated with the markings on his skin, its essence now a permanent part of him. I need to go to the temple, he said with quiet determination. The guardian there, Rei, can teach me to fully control these abilities, to use them as they were meant to be used, to maintain balance between realms rather than destroying the boundaries. You can't go alone, Sakura protested immediately. Not with Kira waiting, and possibly Shinzoku forces as well. I won't be, Naruto assured her, grateful for her concern. But this isn't just a mission anymore. It's becoming clear that my bloodline awakened for a reason, to counter whatever Kira has set in motion. I'm the only one who can directly oppose her methods. Tsunade considered this, her expression thoughtful despite the gravity of the situation. A team, she decided. You, Kakashi, Sakura, and Shikamaru. Leave immediately for the land of demons. I'll send reinforcements as they can be assembled. What about the remnant? Shikamaru asked. The pilgrims gathering at the northern border. I'll handle them, Tsunade replied grimly. If they're connected to Kira's plans, they need to be contained. As the others moved to prepare for the mission, Sakura lingered behind with Naruto, her medical training prompting her to check his condition. The markings, she observed, studying the patterns now permanently visible on his skin. They're stable now, integrated with your chakra network rather than disrupting it. The regulator helped, Naruto explained, showing her where the crystal had merged with his palm. It's technology from the early days of contact between realms, designed to help Oni-human hybrids maintain balance between their dual natures. Sakura's fingers traced one of the marking patterns on his forearm, her touch gentle. Clinical but not without personal concern. And the changes to your appearance. Naruto hadn't seen himself since the transformation, but he could feel the differences, sharper senses, altered perception. A subtle but fundamental shift in how he experienced the world around him. Part of the process, he said simply. The bloodline isn't just awakening abilities, it's expressing the Oni heritage that was always there, just dormant. Will it continue? She asked, the unspoken question clear. How much of Naruto would remain when the transformation was complete? Yes, he admitted honestly. But not uncontrolled, not anymore. I understand now what's happening, what these changes mean. They're not erasing who I am. They're adding to it, expanding it. Sakura studied his face, perhaps looking for signs of the friend and teammate she'd known for years. Whatever she saw seemed to reassure her. Just don't forget your way home, she said softly. No matter how far between worlds you travel. Never, Naruto promised, and meant it. As they prepared to depart for the land of demons, for the confrontation that would determine the fate of two realms, Naruto felt a strange calm settling over him. The chaotic awakening of the bloodline had been disorienting, frightening at times, but now that he understood its true purpose, the path ahead, though dangerous, was clear. He was neither fully human nor fully Oni, but something between, a bridge, not a breach. And in that unique position lay the power to preserve balance rather than destroy it. Whatever Kira had planned at the Temple of Echoing Whispers, whatever forces she had gathered to support her vision of transcendence, he would meet them with this newfound understanding, and with friends who, despite his transformation, still saw Naruto Uzumaki beneath the Oni markings. The journey to the land of demons would take 3 days at top speed, crossing Fire Country's northern forests before entering the mountainous terrain that marked the border. As Naruto and his team departed Konoha, the first reports were coming in of new rifts forming, smaller than the one Naruto had controlled, but appearing within. Increasing frequency along the line Shikamaru had identified. Kira's work, Kakashi surmised as they leapt through the canopy, moving at a shinobi's pace. Weakening the barriers systematically, creating a fault line leading to the temple. Like cracks spreading through ice, Shikamaru agreed. Each new breach makes the next easier to create. Naruto, running at point position, could sense the disturbances even at a distance, resonances in the dimensional fabric that called to the Oni chakra flowing through his veins. With the regulator's influence, these calls no longer overwhelmed him, but he remained acutely aware of them. Can you feel how far this extends? Sakura asked, noting his concentration. All the way to the temple, I think, Naruto replied. It's like a path being laid, or a fuse being lit. Toward what end? Shikamaru wondered aloud. Even if Kira reaches the temple and attempts whatever ritual she's planning, how does she expect to control the aftermath? From what you've described, merging the realms would be catastrophic. I don't think she plans to control it, Naruto said after a moment's consideration. I think she expects to transcend it, to evolve beyond the constraints of either reality. Megalomaniacal, Kakashi observed dryly. But not uncommon among those who pursue forbidden knowledge. They convince themselves they're special, exempt from the consequences that would destroy lesser beings. They pushed on through the day, stopping only briefly to rest and reorient. As night fell, they made camp in a small clearing, setting watches against the possibility of Shinzoku patrols or other threats. During his watch, Naruto sat cross-legged at the edge of the clearing, extending his senses in the way he'd been learning. The Oni chakra enhanced his perception dramatically, allowing him to monitor the surrounding forest for miles in every direction. He detected movement to the north, a group traveling parallel to their route, moving with purpose. Focusing more intently, he recognized the distinctive energy signatures of the remnant pilgrims they'd encountered earlier. They're heading for the temple too, he murmured to himself. Following the fault line like moths to flame. Another complication? Kakashi asked, appearing silently beside him. Naruto nodded, unsurprised by his former teacher's stealth. The remnant pilgrims, at least a dozen, maybe more, traveling toward the land of demons. Expected, I suppose, Kakashi said. If they truly believe in this great reunion, they'd want to be present for its culmination. They don't understand what they're rushing toward, Naruto said, troubled by the thought of more people being drawn into Kira's dangerous scheme. They think it's ascension, evolution, the fulfillment of prophecy, not destruction. Faith can be a powerful blindfold, Kakashi observed, especially when it promises transcendence of mortal limitations. They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the stars wheel overhead. Finally, Kakashi asked the question that had clearly been on his mind. How are you adjusting to the changes? Truly, Naruto considered the question seriously. It's strange. Parts of me feel more aligned than ever before, like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. Other parts are still adapting, still learning what it means to be both human and something else. Your appearance has stabilized, Kakashi noted. The black markings covering Naruto's skin had indeed settled into permanent patterns, elegant, symmetrical designs that followed the flow of his chakra network. His eyes retained that subtle luminescence, and his features had that slightly sharper, more defined quality. On the outside, maybe, Naruto said with a small smile. Inside, it's still evolving. The regulator helps maintain balance, but the integration continues. He looked down at his hands, where the markings formed intricate whorls around his fingers. The strangest part is that it doesn't feel wrong. Different, yes, but not alien. Like I'm becoming more fully myself, not less. The best transformations often feel that way, Kakashi said thoughtfully. Not a replacement of what was, but an expansion into what could be. The insight surprised Naruto, not the observation itself, but the fact that Kakashi seemed to truly understand what he was experiencing. You don't fear what I'm becoming, he realized. Even though it's something outside normal human experience. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled in a smile. Naruto, nothing about you has ever been normal human experience. From the day you were born with the 9 tails sealed inside you, your path has been extraordinary. This is simply another chapter in that journey. The simple acceptance in those words meant more than Naruto could express. In a world increasingly defined by those who feared his transformation and those who worshipped it, Kakashi's matter-of-fact acknowledgement of it as simply part of who Naruto was, not the whole definition. Just an aspect, was profoundly grounding. Get some rest, Kakashi advised, rising to his feet. I'll take the remainder of your watch. Tomorrow we enter the mountains, the terrain will become more challenging. Naruto nodded gratefully, moving back toward the camp. As he settled beside the embers of their small fire, he cast his senses outward one last time, checking for threats or changes in the dimensional fabric. What he found instead was a familiar presence. Small, quick, moving with practiced stealth at the periphery of his awareness. Not threatening, but deliberate in its approach. Akane. He realized, recognizing the girl who had first warned him about Kira's true nature. She was following them, keeping her distance but clearly trailing their party. Naruto considered alerting the others but decided against it. The girl had risked much to warn him before. If she was following them now, she likely had reason. He would watch for an opportunity to speak with her privately, to learn what new information she might have. With that decision made, he allowed himself to drift toward sleep, the Oni chakra settling into a steady rhythm within him. In his dreams, he saw the crimson sky of the other realm, felt the flow of pure energy that constituted its fundamental nature, and heard the distant voices of those who had walked the path he now followed, guardians of the balance between worlds. By midday of the second day, they had left the forests behind and entered the rugged foothills leading to the land of demons. The terrain grew increasingly dramatic, steep slopes, narrow ravines, ancient stone formations shaped by wind and time into fantastic configurations. We're entering sacred territory, Sakura observed, noting symbols carved into Akkas. Ional rock faces, old wards and boundary markers, some so weathered they were barely visible. These mountains have been considered spiritually significant for centuries. With good reason, Naruto replied, sensing the subtle changes in the dimensional fabric around them. The barriers between worlds are naturally thinner here, even without Kira's interference. Which is presumably why the Temple of Echoing Whispers was built in this region, Shikamaru noted, to monitor and maintain those barriers. As they climbed higher, the air grew noticeably thinner, and a strange quality entered the light, colors seeming slightly more vivid. Shadows somewhat deeper. To Naruto's enhanced senses, the effect was particularly pronounced. He could see energy patterns flowing through the landscape itself. Ancient currents of chakra that had shaped the mountains over millennia. They had stopped to rest at a plateau overlooking a dramatic valley when Naruto felt it, a ripple in the dimensional fabric, stronger than any he had sensed before. He turned toward the sensation, eyes widening as he saw the air beginning to distort several hundred yards away. Another rift, he warned the others. A big one. They moved into defensive positions as the distortion expanded rapidly, forming the now familiar vortex pattern. But unlike previous manifestations, this one seemed deliberate in its formation, not a random breach, but a controlled opening. When the rift stabilized, a figure stepped through, not one of the ethereal Oni, but a human woman with striking white hair and blue eyes. Rei, Naruto recognized immediately, relief washing through him. The temple guardian approached their group, her expression grave. I sensed your approach and came to intercept you. The situation has deteriorated more rapidly than anticipated. Kira, Kakashi asked. She reached the temple yesterday, Rei confirmed. With a contingent of Shinzoku operatives. They've taken control of the outer sanctum and are preparing for a ritual timed to the celestial alignment 2 days from now. The same alignment that first allowed the Oni to cross between realms, Naruto guessed, drawing on knowledge that seemed to surface from his awakening bloodline. Rei nodded. When the boundaries naturally thin, making a complete breach possible with sufficient power. Her gaze fixed on Naruto, taking in his transformed appearance. I see the regulator has integrated successfully. That will help, but full mastery of your abilities requires proper instruction, guidance I had hoped to provide before confrontation became necessary. How bad is it at the temple? Shikamaru asked, practical as always. 20 Shinzoku operatives, all with artificially enhanced abilities similar to what Kira possesses, Rei reported. Plus Kira herself, whose powers have grown considerably. She's using an ancient artifact, the resonance stone, to amplify the dimensional disturbances. The fault line we detected, Kakashi said, leading from Konoha to the temple. Yes, Rei confirmed. She's creating a channel of weakened reality, making it easier to establish the final breach at the temple nexus. She turned to Naruto. Your contact Th Kato has accelerated your development, but you'll need more than raw power to counter what Kira has set in motion. You need technique, control. Can you teach me? Naruto asked. In the time we have left. Some, Rei said cautiously. The most essential methods. But we must move quickly, and not along the main path. Shinzoku has patrols throughout the region, and they're particularly alert for your chakra signature. What about the remnant? Naruto asked. They're heading toward the temple too. A shadow crossed Rei's face. Many have already arrived, camping around the temple grounds. They believe they're gathering to witness transcendence, unaware they're being positioned as sacrifices. Sacrifices, Sakura echoed, alarmed. The ritual Kira plans requires immense energy, Rei explained grimly. Energy she intends to harvest from those with traces of Oni blood, the remnant pilgrims who've been drawn to your awakening. The revelation struck Naruto like a physical blow. She's going to drain them. Like the absorption ability of the Oni bloodline, yes, Rei confirmed. But corrupted, perverted from its original purpose. The true Oni could share energy, circulated between willing participants. What Kira plans is one-directional, a complete draining that will leave nothing behind. We have to warn them, Naruto insisted. They don't know what they're walking into. Most wouldn't believe you, Rei said sadly. Their faith in the promised reunion is absolute, reinforced by generations of prophecy and expectation. But, she added, seeing Naruto's distress, we may be able to save some. There's a hidden approach to the temple, a path known only to the guardians. It will allow us to reach the inner sanctum undetected. And then, Kakashi asked. Then Naruto mused. Complete his training as quickly as possible, Rei said, while you prepare to disrupt the ritual and evacuate any remnant who will listen to reason. She gestured toward a narrow ravine cutting between two towering peaks. The hidden path begins there. We should move immediately. There's a patrol approaching from the south. As they followed Rei into the ravine, Naruto extended his senses, confirming her warning. A group of 6 was indeed moving toward their previous position, their chakra signatures carrying the same artificial enhancement he'd sensed in Kira. The ravine twisted between sheer rock walls, eventually narrowing to a passage so tight they had to move sideways to progress. When it finally opened out, they found themselves in a hidden valley, a lush, green sanctuary surrounded by protective peaks. Invisible from the main approaches. The Guardians, retreat, Rei explained as she led them toward a small cluster of stone buildings nestled against the far cliff face. A train, ing ground for those who maintain the balance between realms. There are more like you? Sakura asked. Once, many, Rei replied, a hint of sadness in her voice. Now, few, most of the ancient Guardi and lineages have died out or forgotten their purpose. Only a handful remain who understand the true nature of the dimensional boundaries and how to maintain them. As they approached the buildings, Naruto noticed symbols carved into the stone, patterns identical to the markings now covering his skin. The sight triggered another surge of ancestral memory, fragments of knowledge rising from his bloodline. This place was built by the first hybrids, he said, the understanding coming to him naturally. The original guardians who chose to remain in this world after the initial contact. Rei looked pleased at his insight. Yes, for thousands of years, they and their descendants maintained the balance, ensuring safe, controlled interaction between realms while preventing the catastrophic merging Kira now seeks. Inside the largest building, they found a circular chamber dominated by a pool of water so still it perfectly reflected the domed ceiling above. Around the walls, niches held crystal. In objects similar to the regulator Naruto had integrated, tools of the guardian lineage. We have perhaps 6 hours before we must move toward the temple, Rei said, gesturing for Naruto to sit at the edge of the pool. In that time, I'll teach you what I can of the guardian techniques, methods of controlling dimensional energy that have been preserved since the first crossing. While Naruto began his accelerated training, the others prepared for the infiltration of the temple. Shikamaru pored over maps Rei provided, identifying approach routes and potential extraction paths. Kakashi and Sakura inventoried their supplies, discussing strategies for confronting Shinzoku operatives with artificially enhanced Oni abilities. As Naruto settled beside the pool, Rei placed her hands on the water's surface, sending ripples across the perfect reflection. The ripples formed patterns, complex, interconnected designs that matched the markings on Naruto's skin. The Oni didn't think in terms of jutsu or techniques as shinobi do. She explained. Their abilities flowed from an intuitive understanding of energy in all its forms. What I'm going to teach you isn't about memorizing hand signs or channeling chakra in specific ways. It's about perception and intention, about seeing the true nature of the boundaries between realms and working with them rather than against them. Under her guidance, Naruto learned to extend his awareness into the dimensional fabric itself, to perceive the intricate patterns that maintained separation between worlds while allowing controlled exchange. He discovered that the markings on his skin weren't just decorative or symbolic, they were functional, channels through which he could precisely direct the Oni chakra for specific effects. The absorption ability you've already begun to master, Ray noted as they practiced. But it has applications beyond simply taking energy from other sources. Properly controlled, it allows you to filter dimensional resonances, to dampen excessive vibrations between realms, to stabilize points of thinning. Hour by hour, Naruto's understanding deepened. The regulator integrated into his palm proved crucial, giving him a foundation of control upon which more advanced techniques could be built. By the time their brief training period drew to a close, he had grasped the fundamentals of what Ray called boundary work, the art of maintaining the necessary separation between realms while allowing beneficial exchange. You learn quickly, Ray observed as they prepared to depart. The blood remembers, even if the mind must be taught. Will it be enough? Naruto asked, acutely aware of how much more there was to master. It must be, she replied simply. You have advantages Kira doesn't. True Oni blood, not an artificial approximation. And the regulator to stabilize your abilities. Most importantly, you understand the true purpose of these powers, balance, not domination. As they rejoined the others, Naruto noticed a familiar presence lingering at the edge of his awareness, that same quick, careful energy signature he had detected the previous night. We're being watched, he said quietly to Kakashi. But not by Shinzoku. Kakashi nodded almost imperceptibly. The small chakra signature that's been following us since we left Konoha. I noticed. Her name is Akane, Naruto explained. She escaped from Shinzoku's laboratories, one of their partial successes at creating artificial Oni abilities. She warned me about Kira's true nature before anyone else. Can she be trusted? Shikamaru asked, having overheard the exchange. I believe so, Naruto said after a moment's consideration. She has every reason to oppose Shinzoku and Kira after what they did to her. Then perhaps we should invite her to join us directly, Ray suggested. Rather than having her trail behind. Another ally with knowledge of Shinzoku's operations could prove valuable. Naruto nodded and stepped away from the group, moving toward the edge of the retreat where the rocky outcroppings provided ample hiding places. Akane, he called softly. I know you're there. It's safe to come out. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a small figure detached itself from the shadows of a boulder, approaching cautiously. The girl looked much as she had during their first meeting, young but with eyes too old for her face, her short red hair wind-tousled. Her thin arms marked with the faded patterns of artificial Oni enhancements. You knew I was following you, she said, not a question but an observation. Since we left Konoha, Naruto confirmed. Why didn't you approach directly? Akane's golden eyes flicked toward the others. Habit. In Shinzoku's labs, survival meant staying hidden, watching from the shadows. You're not in the labs anymore. Naruto reminded her gently, and we could use your help. You know Shinzoku's operations better than any of us. I know Kira, Akane agreed, a shadow crossing her face. I know what she does to those who fail her experiments, or those who've served their purpose. She straightened, seeming to come to a decision. I'll help you stop her. Not just for revenge, but because what she's planning will destroy everything, including herself, though she doesn't believe it. Naruto introduced her to the team, noting the way she particularly studied Ray with a mixture of wariness and fascination. You're a true guardian, Akane said to the white-haired woman. I saw drawings of your kind in Kira's private journals, descendants of those who maintained the boundaries. And you're a survivor of Shinzoku's attempts to recreate the Oni bloodline, Ray replied, her blue eyes compassionate as she took in the girl's marked arms. What they did to you was an abomination, a perversion of powers meant to protect and balance. They called us vessels, Akane said quietly. Containers for power we couldn't possibly understand or control. Most died during the enhancement process. The rest, she trailed off, the implication clear. What can you tell us about Kira's current operation? Shikamaru asked, redirecting the conversation to immediate tactical concerns. Numbers, positions, capabilities. Akane's demeanor shifted, becoming more focused, analytical. Despite her youth, She had clearly developed keen observational skills during her captivity. 23 Shinzoku operatives at last count, she reported, confirming and expanding on Rei's earlier assessment. All enhanced with partial Oni abilities, chakra absorption primarily, though some have developed more specialized capabilities. They're stationed throughout the temple complex, with the heaviest concentration at the central nexus. And Kira herself? Kakashi inquired. Changed, Akane said, a hint of fear entering her voice for the first time. The resonance stone she's using, it's altering her, accelerating her artificial enhancements beyond what should be possible. She's becoming something neither human nor Oni, but a distorted hybrid. The resonance stone, Rei interjected, her expression grave. An artifact from the early days of contact between realms. It was meant to facilitate communication across dimensional boundaries, not to force them open. How do we counter it? Naruto asked. With its counterpart, Rei replied, producing a small object from within her robes, a crystal similar to the regulator Naruto had integrated. But larger, its internal structure more complex. The Harmony Stone. Where the resonance stone amplifies dimensional disturbances, this stabilizes them. She offered it to Naruto. Combined with your awakened bloodline and the guardian techniques you've begun to learn, it may be enough to disrupt Kira's ritual. Naruto accepted the crystal, feeling it respond to his touch much as the regulator had, though this artifact remained separate, not merging with his markings. The approach to the temple will be the most dangerous part, Akane warned as they finalized their plans. Shinzoku has patrols throughout the surrounding mountains, and the remnant camp will make stealth difficult once we near the grounds. The hidden path will bypass most of the patrols, Rei assured them. And as for the remnant, she glanced at Naruto. Many will recognize you immediately. Your appearance now marks you unmistakably as what they've been waiting for, the awakened one. Hitch could be either an advantage or a severe complication, Shikamaru observed. Depending on how they react to Naruto contradicting their beliefs about the Great Reunion. We'll deal with that when we must, Kakashi decided. For now, our priority is reaching the inner sanctum before Kira completes her preparations for the ritual. As they gathered their equipment and prepared to depart the Guardians' retreat, Naruto found himself studying the ancient symbols carved into the walls one last time. With his enhanced perception, he could now read them for what they truly were. Not decorative patterns but functional diagrams. Instructions for maintaining the delicate balance between realms. The knowledge settled within him alongside the techniques Rei had taught, reinforcing his understanding of what the Oni bloodline was truly meant to accomplish. Not domination, not transcendence through destruction of boundaries, but harmony through careful stewardship of the connections between worlds. It was a purpose that resonated with who he had always been, someone who built bridges between people, who found strength in connections rather than divisions. Perhaps that was why the bloodline had awakened in him specifically. Why it felt increasingly natural despite its extraordinary nature. As they set out for the temple, following Rei along the hidden path that wound through impossible terrain, Naruto felt a growing certainty. Whatever Kira had unleashed by triggering his bloodline's awakening, whatever catastrophe she now sought to initiate at the temple nexus, he would meet it not Jew. Street with power but with purpose, the purpose encoded in his very blood, passed down through generations of guardians who had stood between worlds, maintaining the balance that allowed both to thrive. The path ahead would test not just his developing abilities but his understanding of what those abilities were for. Not personal transcendence, but protection of the many, both human and Oni, who would suffer if the boundaries between realms collapsed completely. It was a responsibility he hadn't sought but now embraced, one more step in the journey that had begun with a lonely child seeking acknowledgement and had led, through unexpected turns, to a guardian of realities standing at the threshold between worlds. The hidden path lived up to its name, winding through impossibly narrow ravines, beneath overhanging cliffs, and occasionally through tunnels carved into the living rock itself. As they progressed deeper into the mountains, the signs of dimensional thinning became increasingly evident. Patches of air that shimmered with subtle distortion, plants that grew in impossible configurations, stones that seemed to phase slightly in and out of solid form. The boundaries are weakening dramatically, Rei observed as they navigated a particularly unstable section where gravity itself seemed to fluctuate. Kira's work with the resonance stone is accelerating the process beyond anything we anticipated. I can feel it, Naruto confirmed, the markings on his skin pulsing in response to the dimensional instability. It's like pressure building before a storm. They emerged from an out cleft in the rock face to find themselves on a high ridge overlooking their destination. The Temple of Echoing Whispers spread before them, an ancient complex built into the side of the largest mountain in the range. The architecture was unlike anything Naruto had seen before, neither purely functional like most shinobi structures nor ornately decorative like feudal palaces. Instead, it seemed to flow with the natural contours of the mountain, stone buildings merging seamlessly with the cliff face, as if grown rather than constructed. Most striking was the central structure, a massive dome of iridescent material that shimmered with its own inner light, pulsing in patterns that matched the rhythm of Naruto's awakened bloodline. The Nexus Chamber, Ray explained, following his gaze. Built directly over the thinnest point between realms. The dome is crafted from crystalline material from both worlds, designed to regulate the natural exchange of energy. It's beautiful, Sakura murmured. And currently corrupted, Ray added grimly. Look, she pointed to dark veins spreading across the dome's surface, cracks in the regulatory matrix, allowing unfiltered energy to leak between dimensions. Kira's doing. Yes, the resonance stone is overwhelming the temple's protective systems, forcing open channels that were meant to remain carefully regulated. Below the temple complex, sprawl across the approach paths and clearings, was the remnant encampment, hundreds of small tents and makeshift shelters housing the pilgrims drawn by Naruto's awakening bloodline. Even from this distance, the atmosphere of expectation was palpable, an almost electric anticipation permeating the gathering. There are so many, Naruto said, dismayed by the scale of potential casualties if Kira's ritual proceeded as planned. Word spreads quickly among those who have waited generations for signs of the Ona's return, Ray explained. What began as a small group at your northern border has grown as others joined the pilgrimage. And Shinzoku? Kakashi asked, his experienced eye scanning the complex for defensive positions. Akane pointed to figures moving among the temple buildings, black-clad operatives patrolling in regular patterns. Concentrated in the main structures, with sentries posted at all known approaches. But not on this ridge, Shikamaru observed. They don't know about the hidden path. Few do, Ray confirmed. It was created by the original Guardians as a final approach if the temple itself were ever compromised. They studied the layout, identifying the least visible route from their position to the Nexus Chamber. Twilight was approaching, which would provide additional cover for their infiltration. The remnant camp presents the greatest challenge, Shikamaru noted. We can't move hundreds of people quickly, and warning them risks alerting Shinzoku to our presence. I might be able to help with that, Naruto said, an idea forming as he observed the pilgrims. They're here because of me, because of what they believe I represent. If I appeared to them, drew their attention away from the temple. A diversion, Kakashi surmised. While we infiltrate the Nexus Chamber. More than that, Naruto continued, the plan crystallizing. A chance to warn them of the true danger, to evacuate as many as possible before Kira's ritual begins. They may not believe you, Ray cautioned. Their faith in the Great Reunion runs deep. Some won't, Naruto acknowledged. But if even half listen, that's hundreds of lives saved. It's risky, Shikamaru said, analyzing the strategic implications. Appearing to the remnant will certainly alert Shinzoku to our presence. We'd lose the element of surprise. Not necessarily, Kakashi countered. If Naruto creates enough of a spectacle, it might draw Shinzoku's attention outward, away from the inner sanctum, exactly where we need to go. They debated the plan's merits as darkness fell, the dome's pulsing light becoming more pronounced against the night sky. Finally, a consensus emerged. Naruto would approach the remnant camp openly, using his status as the awakened one to address the pilgrims while the rest of the team used the distraction to infiltrate the temple complex. Be careful, Sakura warned as they prepared to separate. Kira will realize what you're doing almost immediately. I'm counting on it, Naruto replied with a grim smile. The more Shinzoku forces focused on me, the clearer your path to the Nexus. Just don't get yourself captured, Kakashi instructed. The entire plan fails if Kira gets control of your bloodline before we can disrupt the ritual. Naruto nodded, appreciating their concern but confident in his growing abilities. The training with Rei, brief though it had been, had given him a much clearer understanding of his powers and how to apply them effectively. As his companions melted into the shadows, beginning their stealthy approach to the temple, Naruto took a moment to center himself. The Oni chakra flowed strong and steady through his system, regulated but potent, ready to be channeled according to the guardian techniques he'd begun to master. Then, with deliberate visibility, he descended from the ridge toward the remnant camp. The effect of his appearance was immediate and dramatic. As he walked among the crude shelters, his skin marked with the glowing patterns of awakened Oni blood. His eyes luminous in the gathering darkness, ripples of recognition spread through the camp. "The awakened one," someone whispered, the words caught and repeated until they became a murmur, then a chant. Rising from hundreds of throats, pilgrims emerged from their tents, falling to their knees or reaching toward him with trembling hands. Some wept openly, overcome by what they perceived as the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. Naruto continued forward, moving toward a natural rise in the terrain that would serve as a platform from which to address the gathering. As he walked, he extended his senses toward the temple, confirming that his diversion was working. Shinzoku patrols were reorienting toward the commotion, drawn by the growing fervor of the remnant. When he reached the elevated position, he turned to face the crowd that had formed. Hundreds of faces turned toward him with expressions ranging from reverence to desperate hope. The markings on their skin, though faded and incomplete compared to his own, pulsed in sympathetic rhythm with his fully awakened bloodline. "I know why you've come," he began, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed gathering. "You felt the awakening, heard the call in your blood, followed the signs to witness what you call the Great Reunion." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "But you've been misled," Naruto continued, his tone compassionate but firm. "The merger of realms you expect, the dissolution of boundaries between worlds, would not bring transcendence but destruction." Confusion replaced reverence on many faces. Some of the pilgrims exchanged uncertain glances, while others frowned in disbelief. "How can this be?" called a voice from the crowd, the gaunt man who had spoken for the remnant during their first encounter. "The prophecies are clear. The awakened one heralds the reunion of worlds, the return to our original state of being." "The prophecies have been misinterpreted," Naruto replied. "Deliberately distorted by those who seek power, not harmony. The Oni bloodline doesn't exist to destroy boundaries, but to maintain them, to ensure balance between realms that were never meant to fully merge." He raised his arms, allowing the markings on his skin to flare with controlled energy, demonstrating the regulated power now flowing through him. "I have spoken with those beyond the veil," he continued, referring to his contact with Kato. "The true Oni do not seek to invade our world or to draw us into theirs. They understand what those who manipulate your faith do not, that our realms must remain distinct to survive. Connected by bridges, not collapsed into chaos." His words were having an effect. While some of the remnant looked angry or disbelieving, others showed signs of doubt, of reconsideration. "The ritual being prepared in the temple," Naruto pressed on, "is not a gateway to ascension, but to annihilation. Those who orchestrate it, Shinzoku and their leader, Kira, do not plan to elevate you, but to sacrifice you. Your trace Oni blood, your connection to the bloodline I carry, makes you fuel for their working." This claim provoked stronger reactions, outright denial from some, fear from others. The crowd began to divide, those who believed or at least doubted separating from those whose faith remained unshaken. "He speaks falsely," the gaunt man declared, his melodic voice hardened with conviction. "This is a test of our faith, a final challenge before revelation." "It is truth," countered another voice, the middle-aged woman who had shown more pragmatism during their first meeting. "I have studied the ancient texts myself, seen the warnings about forced merger that were edited from the versions passed down to most of us." The disagreement spread through the crowd, growing heated as belief systems were challenged and defended. Naruto observed the split forming. Perhaps a third of the pilgrims seemed receptive to his warning, another third uncertain. The remainder steadfast in their original beliefs. "Those who wish to leave, to reach safety before the ritual begins, should go now," he urged, focusing on those who seemed most receptive. "Head south, away from the temple and the dimensional fault line. The rest," He looked toward those who remained unmoved by his words. I cannot force you to believe me. But I beg you to consider, if I truly am the awakened one you've waited for, why would I warn against the very event you've come to witness, unless the danger were real? This logical appeal reached some who had been resistant, adding to the number preparing to depart. Families gathered children and belongings, small groups forming for the journey away from the temple. From the corner of his eye, Naruto caught movement on the temple. Approach. Black-clad figures emerging from the complex, moving with purpose toward the camp. Shinzoku operatives, coming to investigate the disturbance and, no doubt, to confront him directly. Go now, he told those who had chosen to flee. I will delay any who try to stop you. As the evacuation began, perhaps 200 pilgrims in total, Naruto turned to face the approaching Shinzoku force. He counted a dozen operatives, led by a familiar figure whose golden eyes gleamed with recognition. Mizuki. He identified the Shinzoku priestess who had attacked him outside Konoha. I wondered when we'd meet again. Vessel 01, she replied, using the clinical designation from Kira's notes. Your timing is inconvenient. The ritual preparations are at a delicate stage. That was the idea, Naruto said, noting with satisfaction that his teammates had successfully used the distraction to infiltrate the temple, their chakra signatures now moving through the complex toward the Nexus chamber. Izuki's gaze shifted to the departing pilgrims, her expression hardening. You've disrupted our carefully gathered congregation. Lady Kira will be displeased. You mean you've lost some of your sacrificial fuel, Naruto countered. Those people came here expecting transcendence, not to have their life force drained to power Kira's ambitions. Around Mizuki, the Shinzoku operatives spread out in a semicircle, their black-marked arms raised in preparation for combat. Each displayed artificial Oni enhancements, crude approximations of the abilities now flowing naturally through Naruto's veins. He would have contributed to something greater than themselves, Mizuki said, as if explaining something obvious. A new reality, free from the limitations of this flawed existence. At the cost of their lives, Naruto replied. And ultimately, both worlds. Mizuki's golden eyes narrowed. You've been speaking with the Guardians. Learning their limited, conservative perspective on the boundaries between realms. I've been learning the truth, Naruto corrected. About the bloodline's purpose, about the balance it's meant to maintain. Balance, Mizuki echoed dismissively. A concept that preserves stagnation, prevents evolution. Lady Kira sees beyond such artificial constraints. Lady Kira is deluded, Naruto said bluntly. And she's using all of you to fulfill her delusion, regardless of the consequences. Anger flashed across Mizuki's face, the scale-like patterns on her skin darkening with emotion. Enough talk. You will accompany us to the Nexus chamber. Lady Kira has prepared a special place for you in the ritual. I don't think so, Naruto replied, allowing the Oni chakra to surge through his markings, illuminating the night with controlled power. Mizuki signaled her operatives. Take him. Alive, but subdued. Quote, the Shinzoku agents moved with coordinated precision, their artificially enhanced bodies blurring with speed as they converged on Naruto's position. Their technique was impressive, clearly the result of extensive training with their partial Oni abilities. But Naruto was no longer the uncertain novice they had confronted outside Konoha. His bloodline had advanced dramatically, and under Rei's guidance, he had begun to master its applications with growing confidence. As the first wave reached him, he channeled the Oni chakra through the patterns on his skin, creating a field of energy that slowed their approach, not through brute force, but by subtle manipulation of the dimensional fabric itself, making the space around him slightly out of phase with normal reality. The leading operatives stumbled, disoriented by the shift. Naruto used their confusion to strike, moving with fluid grace between them, his touches precise and measured. Where he contacted their enhanced bodies, the black markings on his hands flared, not draining their chakra completely but disrupting the artificial Oni energy flowing through their systems. One by one, they collapsed, their enhancements temporarily neutralized by his controlled intervention. Unlike Kira's crude absorption technique, which destroyed what it took, Naruto's approach simply reset the balance, returning their systems to a natural state. Mizuki watched in growing alarm as her squad was systematically disabled without apparent effort. When only she remained, Her golden eyes reflected calculation rather than fear. "You've progressed faster than anticipated," she observed, falling into a combat stance that incorporated elements of traditional ninjutsu with movements unique to Shinzoku's enhanced operatives. "But you're still learning, still discovering the boundaries of your abilities. I have lived with mine for years." She attacked with blinding speed, her hands wreathed in dark energy that mimicked the Oni chakra absorption technique. Where the other operatives had been direct and straightforward, Mizuki was subtle, elusive, her movements flowing like water around Naruto's defenses. Their clash illuminated the night. Black energy meeting black energy as artificial enhancement confronted true bloodline awakening. Mizuki was formidable, clearly Kira's most successful creation before Naruto. Her body modified to channel Oni-like abilities with impressive control. But as the battle extended, the fundamental difference between them became increasingly apparent. Mizuki's power, while considerable, was limited, a finite resource that depleted with use, requiring conscious replenishment. Naruto's, by contrast, flowed from an internal wellspring that deepened rather than diminished with expression. His regulated Oni chakra integrating more fully with each technique he employed. Recognizing her disadvantage, Mizuki changed tactics, disengaging from direct confrontation to create distance. "You fight impressively," she acknowledged, her breathing slightly labored. "But not decisively. You disable rather than destroy, incapacitate rather than kill. Such restraint is admirable in conventional combat, but ultimately limiting." "It's not restraint," Naruto corrected. "It's purpose. The Oni bloodline isn't a weapon, but a responsibility. A perspective Lady Kira predicted you might adopt." Mizuki replied with a thin smile. Which is why she prepared contingencies. Before Naruto could respond, Mizuki formed a complex series of hand seals, not standard ninjutsu patterns, but something older, more primal. The air between them shimmered as she completed the sequence, and Naruto felt a sudden, painful resonance within his blood. A binding, he realized, recognizing the technique. From Rei's descriptions, an ancient method used by the original Guardians to temporarily suppress Oni abilities when necessary. Adapted from the very Guardians you now emulate, Mizuki confirmed. Satisfaction evident as the binding took effect, disrupting the flow of Oni chakra through Naruto's system. Lady Kira has studied all aspects of the bloodline, including the methods used to control it. The binding wasn't complete. The regulator integrated into Naruto's palm counteracted its worst effects, but it created enough disruption to handicap him significantly. His markings dimmed, their GL.Ao fading as the channeling patterns were temporarily blocked. Mizuki pressed her advantage, closing the distance between them with renewed confidence. Her hands, still wreathed in that dark approximation of Oni energy, struck with precision at his weakened defenses. Naruto evaded the first series of attacks, but without full access to his bloodline abilities, his options were limited. A glancing blow caught his shoulder, and he felt the unpleasant sensation of his energy being drawn outward, siphoned by Mizuki's artificial absorption technique. Unlike his controlled, balanced approach to the ability, hers was raw and destructive, designed to take without regard for the source. The contact left his arm momentarily numb, the markings there completely darkened. "You see the difference between us," Mizuki observed as they continued their dance of attack and defense. "I use what I take. You fear your own potential. I respect it," Naruto countered, adapting to the binding's limitations. Ling back on his traditional shinobi training while his bloodline abilities remained partially suppressed. "There's a difference. He created shadow clones, a technique that drew on his natural chakra, rather than the Oni energy, surrounding Mizuki with multiple targets. As she engaged them, he focused inward, applying the meditation techniques Sakura had shared to stabilize his internal energies, gradually weakening the binding's hold. The process was slower than he would have liked, but effective. Gradually, the flow of Oni chakra resumed, the markings on his skin beginning to glow once more. By the time Mizuki had dispatched the last of his clones, Naruto had regained enough control to counter her next assault. When she closed for what she clearly intended to be a decisive strike, he met her not with resistance but with redirection, a principle central to the guardian techniques Rei had taught him. Instead of blocking Mizuki's absorption attack, he channeled it, creating a circuit that reflected her own energy back toward its source. The effect was dramatic and immediate. Mizuki's artificial enhancements, never designed for such feedback, overloaded. The scale-like patterns on her skin flared painfully bright, then began to crack like porcelain under too much heat. She staggered backward, golden eyes wide with shock and pain. What did you do? Restored balance, Naruto replied simply. Your enhancements take without giving, consume without replenishing. That creates instability, especially when the energy is reflected back to its source. Mizuki fell to her knees, artificial Oni patterns on her skin continuing to fracture, flaking away like dead skin to reveal unmarked human flesh beneath. Her expression shifted from pain to something more complex, a mixture of fear and, surprisingly, relief. You've undone years of modification, she gasped, staring at her increasingly normal hands. Lady Kira's gift, her curse, Naruto corrected gently. A corrupt ion of abilities that were never meant to be forced or artificially replicated. As the last of the enhancements dissolved, Mizuki seemed to physically diminish, not in size, but in presence. Without the artificial Oni energy sustaining her, she appeared suddenly very human, very vulnerable. What happens now? She asked, her once golden eyes fading to a natural brown. Without the enhancements, I am nothing to Shinzoku. You're yourself, Naruto told her. Whatever that means, whatever that becomes, is up to you, not Kira, not Shinzoku, not the artificial power they grafted onto you. He extended a hand to help her up, but she shook her head, remaining kneeling. Go, she said quietly. Stop what's happening in the Nexus chamber. I need time to understand what I am now. Naruto nodded, respecting her need for space after such a fundamental transformation. He turned his attention toward the temple, extending his senses to locate his teammates. They had penetrated deep into the complex, approaching the Nexus chamber from different directions as planned. But he could also sense a massive concentration of energy at the center, Kira's presence, drastically altered from when he had last encountered her. Surrounded by the pulsing power of the resonance stone, the ritual was further advanced than they had anticipated. If he didn't reach the Nexus soon, even the combined efforts of his team might not be enough to prevent catastrophe. With a last glance at Mizuki and the incapacitated Shinzoku operatives, Naruto sprinted toward the temple entrance. Behind him, the remaining remnant pilgrims watched in confusion, their faith in the great reunion shaken by his warnings but not entirely dispelled. The interior of the Temple of Echoing Whispers was unlike any structure Naruto had encountered. Corridors shifted subtly as he passed through them, spaces expanding or contracting in response to the dimensional fluctuations emanating from the Nexus. Ancient symbols carved into the walls glowed with faint energy, some pulsing in harmony with his bloodline markings, others darkened or cracked, damaged by Kira's interference with the temple's regulatory systems. As he penetrated deeper into the complex, Naruto encountered evidence of struggle, Shinzoku operatives incapacitated by his teammates' advance, barriers broken through, traps disarmed. The path they had cleared allowed him to move quickly toward the central chamber. He paused at an intersection where the corridors displayed particularly severe dimensional distortion, the air rippling like heat mirages over desert sand. Closing his eyes, he extended his senses in the way Ray had taught him, perceiving not just physical space but the underlying patterns of reality itself. What he found was alarming. The temple's fundamental structure was beginning to break down, the careful regulatory systems built into its very stones overwhelmed by Kira's use of the resonance stone. If the process continued unchecked, the entire complex would soon become a massive breach point between realms. Following his enhanced perception, Naruto navigated the increasingly unstable corridors until he reached a massive doorway in Ibed with intricate patterns matching those on his skin. Beyond it lay the Nexus chamber, the heart of the temple, built directly over the thinnest point between dimensions. The doors stood partially open, damaged during his team's forced entry. Through the gap, Naruto glimpsed chaos. The chamber beyond was enormous, dominated by a central platform suspended over a well of swirling energy, the natural junction between realms. Now expanded and destabilized by Kira's machinations. Above it, the iridescent dome he had observed from outside was fracturing, dark veins spreading across its surface as the regulatory matrix failed. On the platform stood Kira, though she was so transformed that Naruto might not have recognized her if not for the familiar violet of her eyes. Her body was covered in advanced versions of the artificial Oni markings, far more extensive and integrated than those Mizuki had displayed. But unlike Naruto's symmetrical, harmonious patterns, hers were jagged, aggressive, spreading like cracks across her skin. In her hands, she held a pulsing crimson crystal, the resonance stone, which cast bloody light throughout the chamber. Around her, a complex ritual array had been established. Symbols drawn in what appeared to be blood-forming concentric circles that channeled energy from the periphery toward the center. Fighting to disrupt this ritual were Naruto's teammates. Kakashi and Shikamaru worked in tandem, the former using his Sharingan to counter Shinzoku operatives while the latter employed shadow techniques to disrupt the ritual circles. Sakura and Rei focused on the support structures of the platform itself, attempting to destabilize Kira's position without collapsing the entire chamber. Akane darted between them, her small size and intimate knowledge of Shinzoku operations allowing her to target critical junctions in the ritual array. Despite their coordinated efforts, they were clearly losing ground. The ritual had progressed too far, the dimensional breach expanding beneath the platform with increasing speed. Through the widening tear, glimpses of the Oni realm became visible, that crimson sky, those floating islands, now much closer and more substantial than in previous manifestations. Naruto didn't hesitate. Drawing deeply on his awakened bloodline, he channeled Oni chakra through the markings covering his body, illuminating the doorway with controlled power as he stepped into the chamber. "Kira," he called, his voice carrying over the dimensional distortions. "Stop this now, you're tearing apart both worlds." She turned toward him, her transformed face splitting in a smile that was both triumphant and terrible. "Naruto, right on schedule, I knew you'd come, the final component in our great working." "This isn't transcendence," Naruto insisted, moving carefully into the chamber, signaling his teammates to continue their disruption efforts while he engaged Kira directly. "It's destruction. The boundaries between realms exist for a reason. Limitations exist to be overcome," Kira replied, her voice distorted, resonating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The separation of worlds was an artificial construct, imposed by the Sage of Six Paths and maintained by the guardian lineages. I am simply restoring the natural order, unity of all realities. That's not what the Oni themselves believe, Naruto countered, reaching the edge of the platform. I've spoken with them, with Kato, guardian of boundaries. They understand that complete merger would destroy both realms. Something flickered across Kira's transformed features, doubt, perhaps, or simple annoyance at being contradicted. The current inhabitants of the Oni realm are as limited in their thinking as the guardians here. They cling to an established order rather than embracing evolution. It's not evolution if nothing survives, Naruto said, taking another step forward. The resonance stone pulsed brighter in Kira's hands, responding to his proximity to T. He true Oni blood flowing through his veins. Some will survive, Kira insisted. Those prepared for the transition, those who understand what's coming. We will become something new, neither human nor Oni, but transcendent beings unbound by the laws of either reality. As she spoke, the chamber shuddered, the dome above cracking further, shards of iridescent material falling around them. The breach beneath the platform expanded dramatically, crimson light pouring upward, bathing the ritual space in alien illumination. "Naruto," Kakashi called urgently, "the structural integrity is failing. Whatever you're going to do it now." Naruto nodded, reaching into his pocket for the harmony stone Rei had given him. As his fingers closed around it, he felt it respond to his touch, to the regulated Oni chakra flowing through his system. "One last chance, Kira," he offered, genuine compassion in his voice despite everything. "End the ritual. Help me stabilize the boundaries before both worlds suffer irreparable damage." For just a moment, something human flickered in Kira's violet eyes, doubt, recognition of the escalating danger. But it was quickly suppressed, consumed by the fanatical certainty that had driven her research for decades. "We're beyond turning back," she declared, raising the resonance stone above her head. "The merger has begun. All that remains is to complete the circuit. To channel the combined energies of both realms through a suitable conduit." Her gaze fixed on Naruto with terrible intensity. "Through you, Vessel 01. The perfect bridge between worlds." Before he could react, Kira slammed the resonance stone down at the center of the ritual array. The impact sent a shockwave through the chamber, disrupting Shikamaru's shadow bindings and knocking Sakura and Rei away from the platform supports. The ritual circles flared with blinding light, the blood-drawn symbols rising from the floor to form three-dimensional constructs that spun around the platform like rings around a planet. From these rings, tendrils of energy shot toward Naruto, seeking to ensnare him, to drag him to the center of the array where Kira waited. Acting on instinct reinforced by Rei's training, Naruto channeled the Oni chakra through specific patterns on his skin, creating a protective field that deflected the grasping tendrils. At the same time, he activated the Harmony Stone, its crystalline structure resonating with his bloodline to project a stabilizing influence that temporarily slowed the expansion of the breach. Impressive, Kira acknowledged, her transformed features twisting in concentration as she intensified the ritual's pull. But ultimately futile. The resonance stone draws power from the breaking of boundaries. The more you resist, the stronger it becomes. She was right. Despite his defenses, Naruto could feel himself being inexorably drawn toward the center of the platform. The Harmony Stone's influence, while significant, couldn't fully counteract the resonance stone's power. Especially with the ritual so far advanced. Naruto! Sakura shouted, attempting to reach him but held back by the spinning ritual constructs. Don't let her complete the circuit. The blood remembers, Rei called, her voice steady despite the chaos. Trust what it knows. Trust what it knows. The phrase triggered something deep within Naruto, not just the techniques Rei had taught him or the understanding gleaned from his contact with Kato, but something more fundamental, more instinctive. The accumulated knowledge of countless guardians before him, encoded in the very Oni blood now flowing fully awakened through his veins. As Kira's ritual dragged him inexorably toward the center, Naruto stopped resisting directly. Instead, he surrendered to the pull, not passively, but with deliberate purpose. Rather than fighting the energy tendrils, he allowed them to connect with his markings, establishing the circuit Kira sought, but maintaining his own control over the flow within it. Yes, Kira exulted as he reached the center, standing opposite her with the resonance stone pulsing between them. Complete the merger. Become the conduit through which worlds unite. Not unite, Naruto corrected, raising the Harmony Stone to mirror her position. Balance. With that declaration, he drove the Harmony Stone into contact with the Resonance Stone, their crystal L-line structures grinding against each other with a sound like reality itself groaning in protest. Where they touched, energies flared and fought, the Resonance Stone's chaotic, boundary-dissolving power against the Harmony Stone's stabilizing, regulatory influence. What are you doing? Kira demanded, trying to pull the Resonance Stone away but finding it locked in position by the connection Naruto had established. What the bloodline was always meant to do, Naruto replied, channeling Oni chakra through the markings covering his body, into the Harmony Stone, and through it into the circuit of the ritual itself. Not destroying boundaries, but maintaining them. Not merging realities, but ensuring they remain distinct yet connected. As he spoke, the nature of the ritual began to change. Chaotic energy Kira had unleashed didn't diminish, but redirected, flowing through Naruto not as a destructive force but as a current to be channeled, regulated, guided back into proper pathways. The spinning ritual constructs slowed, their patterns shifting from jagged, aggressive configurations to more balanced, symmetrical designs. The breach beneath the platform stopped expanding, its edges stabilizing, defining themselves more clearly. No, Kira cried, redoubling her efforts to wrest control of the process. We're so close to transcendence. Don't reduce it to mere connection. Connection is not reduction, Naruto countered, maintaining his focus despite her resistance. It's the foundation of all things. The Oni understood this. That's why they became guardians of the boundaries, not destroyers of them. As the ritual continued to transform under his influence, Naruto became aware of presences gathering on the other side of the stabilizing breach, figures watching from the Oni realm. Their luminous forms becoming clearer as the connection between worlds established itself in a controlled, balanced manner. Among them stood Kato, the guardian of boundaries, his ancient eyes approving as he observed Naruto's work. Beside him, other Oni had gathered, their collective presence adding weight and influence to the stabilization process. They're helping, Rei observed, able to PP roached the platform now that the chaotic energies were being channeled into regulatory patterns. The Oni themselves are reinforcing what you're doing. Indeed, energy now flowed from the other side, not invasive or destructive, but supportive, harmonizing with Naruto's efforts to establish a stable, controlled connection between realms. Kira's expression shifted from rage to disbelief as her grand vision of transcendent merger was systematically converted into something else entirely. A gateway, yes, but one carefully regulated, maintaining the distinct nature of both realities while allowing controlled exchange between them. "You're ruining everything," she accused, her artificial enhancements flaring erratically as the ritual's nature changed, reducing cosmic transcendence to a mere doorway. "A bridge," Naruto corrected, his voice calm despite the immense energies flowing through him. "The same bridge the original Oni-human hybrids established and maintained for generations. Not destruction disguised as evolution, but connection that respects the integrity of both sides." The confrontation reached its climax as the two stones, resonance and harmony, fused at their point of contact, becoming something new. Neither purely chaotic nor purely regulatory but balanced between extremes. The combined crystal pulsed with energy that was neither solely of the human world nor solely of the Oni realm, but a carefully calibrated blend of both. As this new artifact took form, the breach beneath the platform stabilized completely, transforming from a ragged tear in reality to a structured portal, a genuine bridge between worlds, surrounded by regulatory systems that would prevent uncontrolled expansion or collapse. Kira staggered backward, her connection to the resonance stone severed by its transformation. The artificial Oni enhancements covering her body began to fail, cracking and flaking away much as Mizuki's had, though more violently, more completely. "What have you done to me?" she gasped, watching her carefully cultivated power dissolve. "Nothing you didn't do to yourself," Naruto replied, compassion in his voice despite everything. The artificial enhancements were always unstable, always destructive to their host in the long term. Without the resonance stone to maintain them, they're breaking down. As the last of her enhancements disintegrated, Kira collapsed to her knees. She looked smaller somehow, diminished not just by the loss of power but by the collapse of the vision that had driven her for decades. "It would have been beautiful," she whispered, staring at the stabilized portal. "A new reality, unbound by the limitations of either world." "This is beautiful too," Naruto countered, gesturing to the bridge between realms, a shimmering, iridescent connection that maintained the integrity of both sides while allowing controlled passage. Not destruction masquerading as transcendence, but genuine connection that preserves what makes each realm unique. The chamber had stabilized, the dome above beginning to repair itself as the temple's regulatory systems reasserted control. The ritual constructs had fully transformed, now forming protective rings around the portal, ensuring its stability and controlling the flow of energy between worlds. Through this stabilized connection, Kato approached from the Oni side, not physically crossing over, but projecting his presence more fully than had been possible through the chaotic rifts. "You have fulfilled your heritage," his mental voice reached Naruto clearly. "The bloodline awakened in you not to destroy boundaries, but to restore proper connection between realms that have been artificially separated for too long." "What happens now?" Naruto asked, aware of his teammates gathering around him, of Kira still kneeling in defeat nearby. "Now the true work begins," Kato replied. "Re-establishing the Guardian protocols, teaching those with the bloodline, diluted though it may be in most, their proper role in maintaining balance. The bridge you've created will allow controlled exchange between our worlds, as was always intended, without risking the catastrophic merger Kira sought." "And the remnant?" Naruto asked, thinking of the pilgrims who had gathered in anticipation of the great reunion. "Those who came seeking transcendence. Some may be disappointed," Kato acknowledged, "but others will find purpose in the truth that they are descendants of guardians, meant to preserve balance rather than destroy it. Those with sufficient Oni heritage may even train to maintain the bridge you've established." As Kato spoke, Rei approached the fused crystal hovering at the center of the platform. "The Nexus Stone," she named it, reverence in her voice. The legend spoke of its creation during the original establishment of the Guardian protocols, a perfect balance of resonance and harmony. It was meant to exist all along, Naruto realized. The two separate stones were incomplete without each other. As were our worlds. Rei agreed. Not meant to merge completely, but not meant to be entirely separate either. The sage's barriers went too far in one direction, Kira's ritual would have gone too far in the other. This, she gestured to the stabilized portal, is the balance point. Kakashi stepped forward, ever pragmatic. What about the temple? The Shinzoku operatives still in the complex? Without Kira's leadership and the resonance stone's power, Shinzoku is effectively neutralized, Akane spoke up, her golden eyes fixed on her former captor with a complex mixture of emotions. Quote, most of the operatives were dependent on her techniques to maintain their enhancements. Like Mizuki, they'll revert to normal humans over time. And the temple itself should be secured, Rei added. Quote, with the Guardian protocols re-established and the Nexus Stone in place, the regulatory systems will gradually repair themselves. As they discussed next steps, Naruto felt a profound sense of completion, not an ending, but a transition to something new yet somehow familiar. The Oni bloodline that had awakened so chaotically within him had found its purpose, its proper expression. The markings covering his skin no longer felt like alien additions but integral parts of himself, channels for abilities that were his birthright and responsibility. Looking through the stabilized portal at the Oni realm beyond, still distinct. Still separate in fundamental ways, but now properly connected to his own world, Naruto understood that his journey had only begun. The awakening of his bloodline wasn't a transformation to be completed, but the first step on a path that generations of guardians had walked before him. A path of balance, of connection, of standing between worlds to ensure both could thrive in their distinctive ways while benefiting from controlled exchange. Not transcendence through destruction of boundaries, but harmony through their proper maintenance. It was, he realized, not so different from the role he had always envisioned for himself in Konoha, building bridges between people, finding common ground while respecting differences, protecting what mattered while remaining open to change and growth. The Oni blood had not changed who he was at his core. It had simply expanded his understanding of what that core purpose might achieve. Chapter 2 End.